This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium.
Episode 69. Ha! Action Cards Part 2.
Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson. It's time to rank the action cards. We're gonna do that so fast. We're gonna rank the action cards. Everybody look out, cause this list won't matter in a year. Hey Hunter, welcome to the show.
That was the new jingle for our new segment called Action Cards Part 2. That we'll never do again. Do you hear that? We'll never do that again, Matt.
Okay. Aw.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, actually, I got a bone to pick with you at the very beginning of the show because I have to endure so much from you all the time, like you doing brilliant bits
Intros.
Like that, without even telling me that that's what you're gonna do.
Sure. I didn't tell myself I was gonna do that.
Yeah. Well, you posted a really embarrassing picture of me from when I was a child on the Discord, and I feel like it really kind of lowered my status. Well, not that I had much status within the community in general.
Sure.
I think I'm traditionally kind of known as the dumb fun one, which is not necessarily, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But Matt, you posted a very embarrassing picture of me when I was like 14 years old.
You were 18, but go on.
I was 18 in that picture?
Wasn't that senior year? No, it wasn't senior year.
That was not senior year. That was, I thought
you were 16.
Yeah, I was 16.
We could drive. I drove us there.
Yeah. We were 16, and we were seeing Zach Galifianakis live and in concert.
In concert.
Yeah.
Singing Tomorrow from Annie.
Yes. He did do that. I just want you to know that I was upset by that, and those of you that haven't been on the Discord, there's a little Easter egg for you to go look for. I don't believe it's pinned anywhere. Is it?
No, I didn't pin it. I saved you that, Grace. And also, here's how I know you're full of it, because right now you're publicly announcing that out there is a really embarrassing picture of you. And if you were truly embarrassed, you would have just not said anything.
Well, this is about owning embarrassment and
Sure,
trying to make people think that I don't care. But
I've given you the challenge to go ahead and match it. But I don't think an as embarrassing photo of me.
No, I think the things I could unearth that are embarrassing for you are so embarrassing that I don't have the heart to do it.
What you could do is you would find things I've said on the internet that are more embarrassing than pictures of me. I think that you could unearth some pretty dumb arguments.
I mean, honestly, I think Little Goblin Britches Part 1 and Part 2
is a tour de force.
It's way more embarrassing. I showed it to
I told you to post the second part of that. We are now talking about things that nobody knows what we're talking about. We are way off.
Go to YouTube, search Little Goblin Britches
Part 2.
Both of them.
Well, okay,
part
watch
one,
both of them.
Part 1 is more embarrassing because it's dumber.
Yeah, it's not funny.
Right. Neither of them. God, neither of them
funny.
are funny. No,
I'll stand by Part 2.
The only thing that's funny about let me put this in. The only thing that's funny about Part 2 is when Sean is filming the sketch, and there's a toaster, and then the toast pops out of the toaster, and it scares him, and the camera shakes. And in those days,
he's a very bad cameraman,
right? And then we just left that in, like that's just in the sketch. The cameraman getting scared by some toast.
Yeah, we're absolute morons, and you shouldn't watch our dumb videos from college because we were dumb college people. Please get me out of this.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So today is part 2 of our discussion about action cards. We promised you 2 weeks ago that we were going to give you the definitive, in order from worst to best.
Yep.
There will be a number 1 action card crowned at the end of this discussion.
Yes, and there will be a number 59 action card crowned
very early in this discussion. Yeah,
very early.
I'm very excited. I think those there have been some discussions before out there on Board Game Geek and probably other places where they have ordered the action cards into a tier list, and I just want to let you know
This ain't that.
This ain't that. We have done it way more definitively than those. Those posts are
so definitive.
Those posts are inferior to the. This is it. No, Matt. We worked hard on this.
You're right.
And we know
spent 2 hours on this.
exactly where every single card goes in the ranking. And if you disagree, like let's say like we put one card. Let's say we put Summit at number 22. Let's just say we did.
Sure. Let's say
if you think that Summit is actually more number 23 or 21, you're wrong. You are wrong.
It should be stated, there's no way we're doing Errata next week because we're not wrong about any of this, and so there will be nothing.
It's all correct. Errata. That's what's crazy. Is it's all correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is the most beautiful list you've ever seen. It's a huge list. It's beautiful.
Can you hear? I'm doing the chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Here, one more.
Perfect.
One more.
Perfect. Nailed it.
Episode 69.
The only errata I will accept, and I will accept everyone that types into the Discord or in Reddit, wherever you respond to this show. If you type nailed it, you're going in the next episode.
You're going in the
errata
next episode.
Because that's the only errata we're accepting.
Nailed it. Yeah.
Nailed it.
I am chomping at the bit to dive into this thing because we've just got so much official, definitive stuff to throw at you.
You know, I just kind of want to stay out of the discussion though first and just continue to talk more and more about how this is going to be 100% accurate, this list, and we will accept no other answers. Okay.
Number 59. This is like a dice tower thing.
Yeah, it is.
Number 59.
Action card number 59
is, you guessed it, it's not Space Cats Peace Turtles if we aren't completely wrong right off the start, and confusing legal text is the worst action card in the game.
Confusing legal text is the worst. And a lot of people are going to say, is that one actually the worst? Because there's 2 others I could think of that are probably worse. But you're wrong. And
I really have to just start this off by saying, yeah, I know. Thank you for your arguments about confusing legal text. I get it. It's better than we say it is, but
no, that's actually
it's
wrong.
Not. It's actually just wrong.
Actually, it's wrong. Confusing legal text is the worst card. When is it useful? Can you tell me?
During the agenda public execution, if you get elected as the person being publicly executed.
Okay.
Full stop.
That's it. That's it.
No, we talked about this last week, and I will reiterate it. Of course, there's other instances, and it probably should be ranked higher, but I refute the number of times I've seen games ruined because of this card. For any new player, I have to keep it this low. If anything, you can think of this list as maybe more geared towards, I don't know, newer players playing on the same types of maps we play on, right? Like cooperative builds, balanced maps. This is a balanced map-centric action card ranking, and it's also geared towards just burn that confusing legal text card and get it out of there.
Right.
Let's get to what is actually probably the worst card, though.
Right. So number 58. Salvage.
After you win a space combat, your opponent gives you all their commodities. Hey, Hunter, when you play the trade strategy card, what do you usually do then with your commodities that got replenished?
Well, because I do everything in the right order with trade, I will trade my commodities to other players in exchange for their trade agreements.
Right. So what do you almost never have? Just
commodities.
Sitting
commodities.
Yeah. Salvage is very bad because you need to win a combat against someone who happens to have commodities in their tray. And that's it. Yeah, sometimes you get like 2 trade goods. It's not a good card.
And you have to win the combat in order to get them too. So
right.
I mean that's a pretty high price.
You're never doing an attack just because you're going to get to salvage some commodities. And I mean, I guess unless it's your last 2 trade goods for spend 10 trade goods or something. I guess you could do it that way. But it's just so rare that that's the case.
And it's going to cost you a command counter. Like on top of all of this, you got to spend a command counter to maybe, like, let's say you're doing it for like a frivolous space battle for 2 commodities. I don't think that's worth it at all. At all.
Right.
At all.
Number 57.
Tactical
Bombardment. Action. Choose one system that contains one or more of your units that have bombardment. Exhaust each planet controlled by other players in that system.
Very specific.
So specific. So often, if you are already blockading a space dock or something and like haven't moved your fleet elsewhere yet, it's a lot of times it's late in the round. If you're doing it at the beginning of the round, all you're doing is exhausting 1 or 2 planets, maybe 3 if it's the Hakan home system, I guess. This is like one of the most specific action cards out there besides confusing legal text.
Yeah,
this is just...
The only point for it is that it's a stall. That's literally it.
Right. And even then, how many instances are you even set up where you can use it as a stall? You have to have a ship with bombardment of above a planet that isn't one of your planets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where we're getting into some ruling stuff, and I'm trying to avoid a bunch of the really weird, annoying technical stuff that we talked about last week. There have been recent Dane rulings. I'm pretty sure the consensus is you can't use negative effects against yourself. Now, there might be a couple instances out there, like of specific action cards where Dane has ruled the other way, but like we're going to get to Lucky Shot later. I'm pretty sure he ruled that you cannot destroy one of your own dreadnoughts, cruisers, or whatever with Lucky Shot. So I'm holding that same logic to Tactical Bombardment. You can't exhaust your own planets with... Actually, this card is specific. I'm sorry. I'm going off on a dumb point. It's got to be a planet controlled by other players. So anyways, specific. Number 56. Ancient Burial Sites. This is the most annoying card in the deck because when we're doing tournament games, it has like this special timing window that no other card has, and the effect is so minimal that nobody ever play. Everybody's always looking for an opportunity to where it's like, oh, maybe it'll be useful this agenda phase, and it never is. So every round I have to be like, is anybody playing Ancient Burial Sites? 1, 2, 3. No? Okay, great. So we waste like 3 to 4 seconds every single agenda phase just waiting on nobody to play this card.
I don't think anybody has played it yet.
At the start of the agenda phase, choose one player, exhaust each cultural planet owned by that player. We added it up. This, for an agenda phase, all the cultural planets could add up to 18 total influence. So if you take the average of that, you're knocking 3 influence off of somebody.
Not good. Not good.
Whoop-de-doo.
Not good. Real bad. Real bad. Number 55. Reparations. Exhaust 1 planet that player controls and ready 1 planet you control. That's after another player gains control of a planet you control. So whatever.
You took my planet. I get to cost you 1 of your planets. Can be cool in really big circumstances. Usually, you just never even play it. This is the first card Asarl discards, and this is the first one you discard if your hand goes above 7. In a lot of cases.
I want to say something about so any effect. We've already had 2 effects that involve exhausting other people. Actually, we've had 3 cards now that are about exhausting other people's planets. The problem with this type of effect is that most of the time, your average player has, if it's at the beginning of a round, a lot of planets that they're going to be able to use to build plastic or to accomplish objectives. And exhausting like a single planet isn't really going to be like a clutch thing to do. There is only 1 card, I feel like, that has kind of an exhaust other planet, maybe 2, that you could actually use in like a strategic way. And what's horrible about Reparations is that you're not even getting to determine
you have
the
no
timing.
Control. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's just a little like, meh, I happen to have this card. So
if it's ever useful, it's not even going to be of your own doing. It's just going to be like a happenstance usefulness, which that makes it really hard to keep a card like that in your hand because you're not going to be able to.
You need to keep the cards that are actually useful when you need them to be useful.
And that you can use to be like, let's say you had Reparations and you were like, oh, I think I'm about to get attacked, so this is great. What if they change their mind? Now you just have this useless card. And what if you discarded like another card because you thought that no, I'm actually going to get to use it and it's going to wreck this round for that other guy. Right. And then they're like, wait, no, I could attack over here. And then oopsie doopsie.
Yeah, and if they really need to, they could sabotage it. Now, that being said, all of these cards at like the bottom of this list, they're never going to get sabotaged because nobody even cares.
Well, but see, that's the thing that makes some of them really horrible is like, let's say by some off chance Reparations is going to hurt somebody else. Well, then it becomes sabotageable.
Right.
So it's like every card that we're going to talk about pretty much has the problem of like, well, it could get sabotaged. But some of these, it's like, well, they're not even useful most of the time, but if they were, you could still sabotage them.
Yeah,
so.
I want to clarify your wording a little bit. I mean, technically, every single action card is sabotageable. Like that is true for all of them. Yes. But our point is to say there are some where it's like, that's a card that needs to get sabotaged versus there are cards that are just like, it's not going to make a difference one way or the other. Well, a great example of a card that like I don't see why it would ever get sabotaged is number 54.
Number 54.
It has an action gain 1 trade good for each industrial planet you control. This is the first one that really takes a big hit because of our map building style. If you're building balanced galaxies, this is even worse. Now, if you have maps where it's like, oh, it's actually not that weird for someone to have like 4 industrial planets, they still have to get lucky and get this card into their hand. But even then, it's still only worth 4 trade goods, which is fine, but usually it's worth about like 1 or 2. Basically, this is a good stall, and that's about it. This is a stall action that anybody can use, and
Yeah, and actually we've kind of got a series of cards coming up that are all kind of bunk stalls. But before we get to that, we've got number 53.
This is the first point of discretion. We're gonna have disagreement here.
Yeah, assassinate representatives.
Ooh. I feel it. I already feel the heat right now from everyone furiously typing. I hear the clacking. After an agenda is revealed, choose one player. That player cannot vote on this agenda. Hunter, why are we ranking assassinate representatives so low? We get to cut somebody out of a vote.
Yeah, but you can't stop them from playing cards. So let's say they can't vote, but they could still play riders, which could have been their plan anyways.
Right. And you've just incentivized them to play riders. If they had a lot of votes and they were already maybe kind of like, I wouldn't mind getting my technology writer out there, you just gave them a reason to play their technology writer.
Right. And the other problem is that there's still 4 other players in the game. So there's you who played it, the person that you assassinated, and also you have to make this call after the agenda is revealed. So this is going to happen while in the same timing that people are playing riders, which is going to make it pretty difficult to call. Now, there are some pretty fringe cases we could come up with, like let's say a lot of people have played riders, and then you throw it in
like
kind of
3 people left
minute.
in the vote.
Yeah.
You can guarantee yourself a vote with this, right? If you've got more than one person but not more than the other, yes, you can assassinate the representatives of that third person. But we're talking about a situation that's like pretty specific. I'm not saying this is like crazy situational, but it is fairly situational. And we felt like assassinate representatives, the number of times I've seen it used to great effect in games is actually pretty low.
Right. Also,
usually someone gets assassinated and that person's like, no, okay, well, that kind of sucks, I guess. Oh, well.
There's also cards that they can play to still influence the vote.
Exactly.
After assassinate So assassinate representatives, I would say, is the weakest of all of the agenda phase effect cards. Besides, I mean, obviously we already named ancient burial sites.
Right.
The other thing about assassinate representatives that I don't really get is that honestly it feels like a weaker version of political secret.
Right. Political secret. I mean, the problem is you have to get a political secret from someone, but still the fact that political secret is so much better than assassinate representatives is a huge factor.
And political secret is very gettable. So I mean, if you're I guess if you're in a position where you're like, oh, I really like assassinate representatives, just get somebody's political secret. They'll trade it to you. It's like
you can probably buy it off them at some point in the game.
And even throw it in as like a little extra in a trade. Like I think political secret is a much better card in almost every way. The only way that it's not better is perhaps the timing, because political secret is when an agenda is revealed. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So
you're kind of calling the shot a little earlier with political secret, but they also can't play action cards when you use it. So yeah.
So it's also worth noting, when we structured this list, we started with the riders. We kind of structured we balanced, we ranked the riders, and then we started inserting things in there. And yeah, assassinate representative had to go below all the riders. And there's just a few riders that we also rank fairly low. We're going to get to them in a few minutes, but I feel okay with assassinate representatives at number 53, but I know in other rankings people put it much higher. So I can't wait to hear the backlash. Number 52, upgrade. After you activate a system that contains one or more of your ships, replace one of your cruisers in that system with one dreadnought from your reinforcements. We talked about upgrade last week in terms of it's one of those ones that's really confusing. People always mess it up. You have to be like activating your system to build there to use it, and all you're doing is turning one cruiser into a dreadnought. So you're gaining 2 resources worth of value in ship. obviously Dreadnought is usually considered a way better ship than a cruiser.
Yes.
But this is a slow step, and it's not a stall. That's the biggest thing. There are lots of other cards that like do things to ships or help you gain ships, and those are stall actions. And so we had to rank this one low because it's not a stall, it has less uses. And all it is doing is getting you a Dreadnought.
Right, and it's costing you a command counter, so you're really not netting a lot of value. Right. Because you already had to have the cruiser, that's 2 resources, and now you're spending 3 influence worth of command counter to turn it into a Dreadnought that's only 2 resources more. Now, the only time that I actually feel like upgrade is used successfully is when you have a cruiser hanging out above a space dock, and then someone is going to build out of that space dock, and they just kind of throw that in along with it. But that's just not a very cool card then.
It's not big. Yeah, it's just not a big deal when it really comes down to it. It's just a thing you got to do. How fun for you. Number 51, War Effort action. Place 1 cruiser from your reinforcements in a system that contains 1 or more of your ships. There's going to be a theme here where all of these, again, like anything that's like mining, all the initiatives where you gain some money or stuff where you just gain some ships, all of those things just have this marginal cost where it's like, yeah, I got to save myself like $1 or $2 or whatever. So like they all end up getting ranked lower because compared to things that are big swing factors, you're never going to have a big swing because you got to place 1 cruiser in a system that already had your ships in it.
But it is good that War Effort is a stall, and it's a stall that you just kind of net a little bit of stuff on top of it.
While a Dreadnought is better than a cruiser, a stall is better than a not stall.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go to the next one, number 50.
Yeah, we're officially in the top 50 of all action cards.
Wow, they're 9 down, 50 to go.
Lucky Shot action. Destroy 1 Dreadnought, cruiser, or destroyer in a system that contains a planet you control. So this is a little bit similar to our tactical bombardment situation, but the inverse.
Yeah.
We need to be on the receiving end of a tactical bombardment to use Lucky Shot.
What I like about it is that it's a stall. I think it's better than War Effort because in a weird situation, I could maybe see Lucky Shot making the difference like on a strategic level where it's like, okay, so if I soften up this, like if I take out this Dreadnought, which, I mean, it's always
that's the main reason you use Lucky Shot. Yeah, you use Lucky Shot because A, it's destroy. So you are straight up killing a Dreadnought. Both shot, no sustained damage, doesn't matter. So that's huge. And then, yeah, keep going.
And yeah, so the fact that it could swing a space battle makes it, in my eyes, better than War Effort, but obviously only a little bit, and it's good as a stall. That's pretty much it.
And it's more situational, so it was tricky. It was actually tricky to put this one above War Effort, but in the end, the effect that it has just seemed like a bigger deal. It was, you know, what it ends up doing to your opponent sometimes can be a very big deal, whereas War Effort, you got a cruiser. Great.
Yeah, I would say no, sorry. What I mean to say is that Lucky Shot is definitely 50 and War Effort is definitely 51, and there's no wiggle room there. It's set in stone. I'm getting a tattoo of it.
Number 49, Plague action. Choose 1 planet that is controlled by another player. Roll 1 die for each infantry on that planet. For each result of 6 or greater, destroy 1 of those units. I harped on this last week. Plague has a chance to do nothing. Yeah. And it has a very in decent situations, it has very little chance to completely wipe out all the ground forces of a planet. Right?
Yeah,
it's most often it's going to kill 50% of the ground forces.
I'm going to go ahead and go on the record here and say that if it weren't for me, this would probably be a lot lower. Matt, I felt like you were coming out pretty hard against this card.
Yeah.
And I tried
uses, though. Like you can soften a big stack. We saw a Plague come out on a huge stack in a recent game, and it did make a difference. I mean, it didn't save them the combat. It was not enough to stop a big stack. Like they went from 17 down to 10.
Right.
That's not a huge effect.
And that's why I think it deserves a little bit. I mean, we very specifically put it at 49. It's not a good spot by any means because it's not a good card by any means.
Right.
But the situation that it combats is a situation that is honestly right now in TI4, there's just not a lot you can do. When somebody has a giant stack. Yeah. If somebody's got a giant stack of infantry, there's Plague, there's X89.
That's about it. There's like Unstable Planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
well, I
Uprising.
mean,
Unstable Planet.
Right.
That's a whole other situation.
Right. That's a whole other thing. And that I would even see that like Plague is like could possibly help against like an Arborec that's like hugely stacked on Mechatol or on their home system or whatever, you know.
Right. Number 48, economic initiative, action ready each cultural planet you control. This is the second initiative. We basically put it above industrial initiative because the number of industrial planets you usually have is very few. Cultural planets, you usually see this used to do all the stuff you want to do in a round, then reset yourself back up to 8 influence or 8 resources for that objective. Yeah. So best case scenario, this kind of nets you a point. Worst case scenario, it really just doesn't do anything and you burn it or you stall. It's an okay stall because it's going to maybe get you a little bit more money or something. But this one's it's tough to like really even consider it. I just forget it's even a card most of the time. Mm-hmm. Like every time I draw economic initiative, I'm like, oh yeah, this. I guess I'll find a time to use this at some point. But it's never like a part of your plan.
Right.
Unless it's like round 2, you got lucky with an economic initiative and you can buy that stuff and then still score 8 resources. That's like its best, situation.
Right. And I'll say that kind of from number 54 industrial initiative to about right now, these cards are kind of all more valuable as a stall, most of them, than they have been for their effect. Actually, and I feel like this is the only one that I feel like I could regularly see it maybe mattering a little bit more than the others, but not by a lot. I would say they're all, they're all solidly in the slot that they're in for history, but there's not a lot of difference between them.
Right.
And then we get to something a little bit different. Number 47, Fireteam. After your ground forces make combat rolls during a round of ground combat, re-roll any number of dice.
This one is interesting.
Yeah. This was a hard one to put. It definitely needed to go lower. Right. I think there could have been an argument for it being even lower than it is. But that argument, of course, is wrong. It is number 47. Now it's number
47. The real point comes down to there are lots of cards that affect combat, and any card where you're just getting to re-roll is a little bit worse than straight-up bonuses. And very specifically, Fireteam is only re-rolling ground forces, which means it's only re-rolling 8s in most cases.
Yeah. But what I like about it, and the reason why I kind of was like, this needs to go near Plague, but the why I like it better than Plague is that it's just letting you re-roll. Like if it was like re-roll all the dice, I would really hate that. I mean, obviously that would be much worse. But if you have good infantry, this could be pretty clutch.
Right. If you have lots of infantry that are good, if you're Soul with a good amount of infantry, it can actually be kind of a huge deal. I mean, we've seen games like decided because of a crazy effective use of this card. Mm-hmm. But more often than not, you reroll some 8s, you don't get any more hits than you were going to get anyways. What's nice about it is that it is reroll any number of your dice rather than like you have to reroll all your dice.
Wait, that's what I just said.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking over you. Whatever. Let's move on to number 46.
Number 46, now and forever, Ghost Ship.
Action, place one destroyer from your reinforcements in a non-home system that contains a wormhole and does not contain other players' ships.
Now, why do we like this one more than a lot of these others? Because I think some people are going to be like, what? Ghost Ship?
Yeah, because it's just a destroyer, right? It's one resource worth of stuff. Why is it not? And it's in a specific place, right? So how could War Effort possibly be worse than Ghost Ship?
Well,
because it can be worth a victory point. And it really does just come down to that. And more importantly than that, oftentimes it's also used as like a really clever way to gain some new trade partners.
Yep.
If you've got a ghost ship, you plop it down in that empty beta on the other side of the galaxy that just gave you 2 new trade partners, and because they're on the opposite side of the galaxy, they're more than happy to trade with you rather than like having to deal with their neighbor or whatever.
Yeah, it has a little more. Some of these cards that we've talked about already, there's kind of a like with Fireteam and Plague and Lucky Shot. There's like some specific like situations you can dream up where like, oh, that could be useful. And I just feel like I've seen the ghost ship situation come up a lot. Like I've seen at least 3 or 4 times someone score a secret objective point off just having ghost ship, and that's it.
Because if you stall a little bit and your last action of the round is ghost ship, nobody's gonna care.
Nobody cares.
nobody's going to go attack that destroyer. They don't have time. They're doing other stuff, or they've already passed.
Right.
And so you just got yourself the free point. So when it is really good, it just gained you that secret objective. You just got a point. And so
there's also
that's super good.
Six ships in
right. Yeah, that's another huge one.
That's another one that it helps
off
with.
of that. Sometimes maybe even adjacent to anomalies. There's a few different situations where you just need that one more ship somewhere that's just not in your stuff, and that's the perfect way to get it there.
Yeah. Next one is
number 45. Bribery.
After the speaker votes on an agenda, spend any number of trade goods. For each trade good spent, cast one additional vote for any outcome. Now, I have a soft spot in my heart for this card. I actually really
this one
like
moved
this card.
a lot. This one jumped all over the place in our ranking.
Yeah.
Because, well, first off, you have to compare it to Distinguished Counselors, which we'll get to, but those are the two change your vote value cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one has the added benefit of being after everything. So this is the surprise.
Yeah.
Distinguished Counselor is not a surprise. It's just flat 5 extra votes. This one, though, the problem is because you have to spend trade goods, and spending trade goods on just votes is like a little bit of a tough proposition and a little weak. It just brought it down a little bit lower for me. What really, I think, solidifies this as number 45 is our next one is going to be our first rider. And I think we had to put Bribery below any riders. It is not as powerful as any rider. Mm-hmm. And that's what puts this where it is.
I think my favorite thing about it is the timing of it, that it happens at the very end, because there's a situation that you can dream up that happens pretty frequently where people don't want to spend that many votes on stuff. Right. So they're trying to they're trying to get that easy tie situation. Where they just tie it up and then the speaker decides it the way that everybody wants it to. And then Bribery comes out and all you end up doing is spending one trade good to basically win an outcome. However, the problem about that situation is that if it's an important agenda at all, most people will price it out so that Bribery cannot swing it. Right. Because you just don't do that. You don't if we're talking about, Chart of the Throne or Mutiny, you don't let it go by just a vote or two.
Right.
So
it's the situations where it is best is for agendas that are fairly meaningless. And
that's the weird case of it. Okay, number 44.
Diplomacy Rider. After an agenda is revealed, you cannot vote on. We know how agenda or how riders work. To go over it, you don't get to vote on the agenda, but you predict aloud the outcome of the agenda. If your prediction is correct, you gain an effect. So Diplomacy Rider's effect is choose one system that contains a planet you control. Each other player places a command token from their reinforcements in that system. We did talk about this last week in that this is like Diplomacy, except technically better because you get to use it on Mechatol Rex, but you don't have absolute control of it definitely happening. The problem with any and all riders is it is not a guarantee that you're going to get it. At best, it is a 50% chance. Yeah. Well, that's not true. There are a couple of agendas that can come out that are you only have one thing to vote on, and that's a very broken situation. I'm not going to account for that. At best, it's a for or against, and you get a 50% chance of getting the rider.
Yeah. I think in a lot of cases, it's kind of the problem with this rider as compared to all the other ones is that this rider needs to match a very specific situation that you are in order to be useful, and that you have something this round that you need to use diplomacy on. However, if players can see that it's going to mean a lot for you to get that, then it will be blocked. Basically. Although, that all being said, we recently saw a game where that did not happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think, but that's partially because I think the players just really weren't, because Diplomacy Rider is so often the one people shrug off and don't think about, they ignored the fact that they were letting the person on Mechatol Rex get it. That might be a misrepresentation of how all the players felt about it, but that would be my argument for why it happened the way it did. Usually, if a player has a good position and they're on Mechatol and they play Diplomacy Rider, no one's going to let it go that. Nobody's going to vote on it that way, unless obviously depends on the agenda. But the gist being basically just that Diplomacy Rider feels like the worst rider because the situations where it's useful are very rare.
Right, and it's very likely that even if you are in this situation where Diplomacy Writer is going to be very helpful to you. There are two ways out of that, one being the Warfare Strategy card,
exactly.
if somebody takes that, and then the other being Unexpected Action.
Right.
So
there are two counters to what you want to do.
Yeah, so even in this kind of Magic Christmas Land situation where Diplomacy Writer is going to be a big part of your game, it's not unblockable.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, number 43, Warfare Writer. After an agenda is revealed, all the things, you place one dreadnought from your reinforcements in a system that contains one or more of your ships. So it's sort of like War Effort, but instead of a cruiser, you get a dreadnought.
Yeah.
$4 worth of stuff.
I think the reason that it's better than something like War Effort or Upgrade is that because we're throwing it into the agenda phase, I feel like you're likely to just get a dreadnought. This is just kind of... This card, I think, is more likely to be like, if you play it on the right side, I don't think it really influences people that much.
No, yeah.
They're just kind of willing to give you a dreadnought. And so this is probably the best get a free dreadnought card, actually, in a weird way.
Right. Diplomacy Writer is usually nobody cares about it, so you're going to get it. But if nobody cares about it, it's because the effect you're going to gain from it is not useful.
Mm-hmm.
Warfare Writer... It's just you're not getting very much, which means people are never going to care that you played it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very much like you're just playing gain one dreadnought. If you're playing it right. I mean, you obviously can just make a really bad judgment call and put it on the wrong side that nobody's going to go for, or you can get unlucky. But in most cases, you're putting it on the side that's going to actually get the votes, and it's not going to sway anybody's opinion.
Yeah. So it's just a free dreadnought, and it shouldn't throw the vote one way or the other. So just predict correctly, and it doesn't have that aspect that some of the juicier writers have, which is that they actually convince people to go the other way. Generally, Warfare Writer is kind of in this Goldilocks zones of not being a big enough deal that people are going to block you from getting it. So you just get your free dreadnought, which is nice.
Right. I would say the one caveat there is if you're barony with like all the tech, Duranium, NES, all that online, and you're like gonna put it right next to a combat that's going to be a big deal, then you might get like one or two players that are like, we can't actually let them get that dreadnought. That's a big deal. So there's a couple cases, but that's super fringe. Number 42.
Distinguished Counselor.
After you cast... we keep doing this. You do it. Go ahead.
Yeah. After you cast votes on an outcome of an agenda, cast 5 additional votes for that outcome. Okay, so... It's basically Bribery, just a little bit better. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you any of your monies to get these extra votes. But it's not a surprise. It is not a surprise, but however, the surprise part of Bribery doesn't need to be overestimated because it will, in some ways, it will be a surprise. If you are second to last, if you're sitting right next to the speaker, then it might be a surprise, basically. So depending on the order and how people played riders and stuff, Distinguished Counselor could basically function the same way. So it shouldn't be overestimated. The fact that Bribery always goes after the speaker doesn't make it some sort of super powerful thing. There are going to be plenty of players that are able to use Distinguished Counselor to get the jump on a vote. Right. And it's not going to cost them any money on top. It just costs them the card.
Right. It barely even costs them a vote. Like they can do it in the first vote for something that's not a huge deal, but they do want it, and you only spend like one of your own votes. You get 6 votes. Nobody wants to spend 7, so they just let you have the little thing, and that's great. The other thing that I think kind of boosts Distinguished Counselor even more in my mind is, and this I know this is super specific, but when the agenda comes out that like limits everyone to 1 vote, you can still use Distinguished Counselor, and by gaining 5 additional votes, you guarantee any election, no matter what your way. And except for like Bribery with a bunch of trade goods is the only thing that could counter you.
Right.
So Distinguished Counselor has this fun benefit of if that certain agenda has come out, it now is an incredibly powerful card. Yeah. Because you can give yourself any agenda whenever you want.
Yeah, and 5 votes just to compare it back to Bribery, this is 5 votes, which would cost you 5 trade goods, which is an awful lot of money to spend on an agenda.
Yeah, even in the situation of that agenda being out and everyone needing to spend more, if I play my Distinguished Counselor, is the person with Bribery really going to spend 6 trade goods to beat my vote?
Yeah, that's a lot. No. That's too much.
I don't think they ever will.
Okay. Number 41.
Mining initiative. Action. Gauge trade goods equal to the resource value of one planet you control. This is our last initiative card, our last just like gain some money. There are a few other gain money things, but this is the last one that's just like strictly an action where you're just going to pump in some money. And this one's interesting. What's nice about it is it can be any planet, which means it can be any home planet. Yeah. So this one got boosted up above the others because if you're L1Z1X or you're Barony or anyone with like a 4 resource home planet, Mentak, Sol, all these factions, it's really good. I mean, that's 4 trade goods that you can use, and you don't have to exhaust the planet. You just gain some trade goods.
Yeah. And it's a
free
good
money.
stall. It's a good stall.
It's a good stall, and it's free money, and it can be worth a lot for certain factions.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
and at worst, it's 2 or 3, right? Hopefully, you have one planet that's worth 3 resources, and you can gain 3 trade goods for it. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I actually really like it, and even like probably could have been talked into it being higher, but too bad it's 41.
Too bad,
and now it's 41 forever now. That's just kind of how it goes.
Number 40,
Spy. As an action, choose one player. That player gives you 1 random action card from his hand. Man, it's hard to place something like Spy in a list. I mean, we put it at 40, which is where it will be until the end of time, but it was hard because it's random. Yeah,
that's another one that moved a lot. It's a random card, and there's the sabotage factor, right? You have to counter in this is the most sabotageable card, is what we sort of decided.
But see, if that's
to categorize it as.
See, when we say that, I don't know that I feel that same way. I think if I had like a full hand of action cards, I would chance it and hopefully not lose my sabotage. But it depends. If I've only got 3, I don't know. But here's the thing. I think that Spy, this is a weird thing to say, but I think because Spy is not that good, its potential, like if somebody sabotages a Spy, I consider that a net gain.
Yeah, that is a win. Yeah,
that's a huge win.
I burned a sabotage.
Yeah, because Spy is not very good. So if somebody uses a sabotage against it, that's honestly, it's kind of a weird paradox where I feel like its power comes from how not great it is, basically.
Yes. Yeah, right. Because you in theory, you should sabotage it because it's better than them just getting your sabotage for free. But like you say, then you're sabotaging a Spy. Ooh, that sucks.
Yeah, but it's a stall, and I think it's obviously we think it's one of the better stalls. Not the absolute best stall, but no. I think whereas Mining Initiative is like, oh, you really you get something really solid every time for it. Spy, you might get something crazy, so it's kind of hard to decide exactly where it goes. You might get something useless, or you might get something really important. Yeah. Well, yeah, useless or useless. But or you could get, something much better.
Right. Number 39.
Construction Rider. After an agenda is revealed, you cannot vote on this agenda. Predict out loud an outcome of the agenda. If your prediction is correct, place 1 space stock from your reinforcements on a planet you control. I have a soft spot for this rider in my heart. I think it's like Warfare Rider, something that people they don't care so much. Doesn't swing a vote.
I would say this is the last rider that has that factor in it. That's like, usually people don't really mind that you've played it.
Yeah. But space stocks are hard to get. Construction is a difficult thing in this game.
Exactly. So it is a much more convenient way to get a space stock, and you're probably not going to get shut out of getting to build that space stock. So yeah, it can feel really good to get it out there. It's not, if it's mid to late game, it's not always very, if it's late game, getting that last space stock is kind of meaningless unless you needed your 3rd space stock out, right? Like that's just the only instance where it's like, oh, thank goodness I had that construction rider. But in like round 5, a construction rider really feels worthless to play on an agenda.
If I get a construction rider, I will start planning to use it though, and I'll try and use it as soon as I can. See if there's a situation. Just because because of that threshold of like, it's what it is. It's that there's not really a way that it's going to get you a VP. So people kind of, there's that one, but that's basically it. But besides that, it's probably not going to get you a VP, but it could help set you up for a much better mid game than you were going to have. Oftentimes, I feel like I'm playing as a faction. Like Hakan is a good example of a faction where I actually need construction really bad, but I can't always make the time to take it.
Right. I agree with that there's certainly some factions where it's like, oh, thank goodness, a construction rider.
But then there are others where it's like, yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Number 38.
Focused research. As an action, spend 4 trade goods to research 1 technology. I like the ability to get a tech kind of out of the traditional cycle of the tech primary or tech secondary. That's what I like about it. It does feel like a steep price, though.
Exactly. The fact that it is very goods. For trade goods, which means like even for Mentach, mirror computing doesn't help this. So it's just like always straight up and down for trade goods. And that does feel like a big cost. If I had to do the secondary of tech and spend 4 trade goods just to do the tech, that would feel like a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Spending Zobat and 1 trade good is not a big deal. Or even like 2 resources and 2 trade goods. But the second you're really burning 4 trade goods just for tech, it feels costly. And so that's why this card. Now, the other advantage, though, is it is a stall. And like you said, this is technically like granting you an advantage on tech. Because you're getting tech outside of the ways you normally get it. So it is very good. And in some cases, you didn't have any other way to get that last tech for the point. This finishes it out, and you're done with the points. You can move on. And that feels really good.
Yeah, there have been times that I've been saved by focused research because nobody picked tech. It was like late game, and I needed 1 more tech, and nobody picked it. But then I had focused research, so I was like, yay, I'm good. But that's a pretty specific case. But, it's 38 now. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Speaking of 38, number 37.
Trade Rider. All the agenda phase stuff, but this time you get 5 trade goods. This one feels like the middle. Like if we said Construction Rider and Warfare Rider, people don't usually care about. Trade Rider is just this weird swing thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes a person getting 5 trade goods is like, absolutely not. We cannot allow this. That is unacceptable.
Like
and
Mentach.
Sometimes it's like, Mentach, or if the objective is out, right? If either of the 2 trade good objectives is out, this feels like a disaster. But there's kind of equal number of situations where it's like, it doesn't sway it enough for me. Yeah. I wouldn't say anyone ever sees a trade rider come out and is like, I don't care at all. That's never the case. But it's like, if you put it on the right agenda, they might still care too much about the effect of the agenda to not to, you can make it work. But this is the flimsiest, I would say, of the riders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell how people are going to feel about it. I think that's kind of why we put it like kind of dead center as far as where the riders are.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. I think it has saved a game for me once or twice.
Right.
But most of the time, it's just kind of in a weird spot of like people don't want me to get it, or like, or it's actually not going to make that much of a difference. But
can I point out a fun interaction?
Yeah.
If economic equality comes out, you do resolve riders after you resolve the effect of agendas. So a trade rider on economic equality vastly changes the context of an economic equality, which is fun. I don't see that happen hardly ever, but you would lose your trade goods and either be at 0 or be at 5. And then with a trade rider, you could be at 10 or be the only person with 5 trade goods. So there's kind of a funky little thing there, but I don't think that does anything to the viability of the card. It's just a fun interaction.
Right.
Hey, Hunter, number 36.
Uprising. As an action, exhaust 1 non-home planet controlled by another player, then gain trade goods equal to its resource value. One of my favorite stalls. What a great stall.
Yeah. You do have to have a planet that's unexhausted. That's confirmed.
Yes.
You've got to be able to actually exhaust the planet. But then this is pretty much equal to the one we had earlier, except for the problem is it's non-home planet. So it's actually kind of surprising that Uprising is above the one where you could gain 4 or 5 trade goods if you're the right faction. But the reason this one is above it is because you're also costing them those resources by exhausting it.
Yes.
So it's not just that you gained 3 trade goods, it's you cost them 3 resources. So you netted 6 over them. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Uprising is that you can use it kind of frivolously for the money. You can use it critically as a stall, and then you can use it critically to hurt another player. Let's say they've used all their planets, they're going to claim 8 resources, and all they have left is just barely enough for 8, and then you use Uprising. Now you stop them from point. I know that's a specific case, but it's a specific case that you can imagine coming up decently often.
Right.
Let's
Number
talk
35.
about Fighter Prototype. At the start of the first round of space combat, apply +2 to the result of each of your fighter's combat rolls during the combat.
This is one that got, I think, pretty high for us. We put it a lot lower, and then we reevaluated it, and we ended up bringing it up, and it's sort of sitting in a position where we let the situational circumstances earn it a few extra points than we normally give to situational cards.
Yeah. Because situationally, this is gonna make a huge difference. This card,
right? Exactly. Yeah, because if you're Sardak Nor or Nalu or even like Sol, who's gone fighter heavy, or anyone with fighter 2, and you have you've got a decent swarm of fighters, this is an absolutely crushing first round of combat. I mean, you will wipe. +2 is a big deal.
Yeah.
But obviously the flip side of that is a lot of times you're a faction that you have 2 fighters, and you play this because I guess it's going to maybe help a little bit, and then it doesn't do hardly anything at all. It doesn't save. You go from a 9 to a 7. Right. Whoop-de-doo. So it is incredibly situational, but it's just so powerful when it is good that it needs to be above. Basically, it just needs to be above Uprising, because Uprising is just this sort of like, ooh, you lose 3, I gain 3. This can earn you way more than Uprising can earn you in the long run.
Which is interesting when you compare it with our number 34.
Morale boost. At the start of a combat round, apply +1 to the result of each of your unit's combat rolls during this combat round. So the timing is a little bit different than Fighter Prototype, but not really, which is just that Fighter Prototype can only be used during the very first round. Morale boost can be used during the first round or any other round. And it's only a +1, but it's a +1 on every ship that you have.
It's good. It's all right. It's not the best. I've seen morale boost not really make much of a difference.
Right. I've seen it whiff a lot.
Yeah. I think actually Fighter Prototype has potential to be more devastating, but you have to actually kind of cater to Fighter Prototype, whereas morale boost is like kind of always going to help out, but in a lot of cases it's just going to help out a little bit.
This is our first card that also there are 4 copies of, and it does get a little bit of a bump on the list just by virtue of you have more chances of getting one. You have a better chance of having a morale boost than you ever have of having the only Fighter Prototype in the deck. So there's a bunch of cards that, because there's 4 copies of them, they're just intrinsically a little bit better. Worth noting with morale boost, you cannot play 2 morale boosts at the same timing. You can play 1 morale boost in 1 round of combat, and then the next round of combat play another one, but you cannot have 2 active morale boosts at the same time. Now, that being said, if your first morale boost gets sabotaged, you can immediately play another morale boost. So there's a little bit of technical mumbo jumbo for you, but I just think morale boost, I've seen it so much more often where someone is trying to take a combat that is not really in their favor, and they're like, I don't know, maybe this will help, and then it never does. It never turned the sides. It never swayed the battle in a meaningful way.
Because it's it's not decisive enough, though.
Right.
Like, I think it's the problem. You wouldn't be like, all right, I have this morale boost. Now, what space battle am I specifically going to do now that I have morale boost? It's like, no, you don't plan around it to that extent.
But on the flip side of that, where morale boost does have a lot of use is that it can also be used during ground combat,
which is
and that
the best thing about it.
Changes things a lot. Turning your infantry from an 8 to a 7, or in Sol's case, from a 7 to a 6, or whatever, or like keep lower. It's just, that's very good. Let's move on to action card number 33.
Number 33, Intercept. After your opponent declares a retreat during a space combat, your opponent cannot retreat during this round of space combat.
This is such a distinctly unique card to me that I feel like I don't see it often enough for as good of an ability I feel like it is. You know?
It's a very
How often do you see an Intercept in a game?
Not very often.
Pretty rarely.
Not very often. I feel like it has a lot of potential, but yeah, you're just not always in a situation where it makes sense. Because I mean, this is essentially the only situation where it's useful is a situation where you just need them to stay one more round, which is not going to be a big space battle. It's like a one that you're guaranteed to win, and you want them to stay, basically.
Honestly, I think the only situation where Intercept is actually like an incredibly valuable card is when you need to destroy someone else's flagship or war sun, right?
Yes.
Because anything else, all you need to do is win a combat. For almost any other objective or any other task you're trying to do, if they retreat, you win. You win the combat. Great. You unveiled your flagship, or you won a combat against the point leader.
Yeah.
You're good. But if you specifically have to kill the flagship, Intercept becomes like this dynamite level, incredibly valuable card.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, how often do you need the big fight to go through? I don't know. Now, if you came to crush SAR and you're just wanting to finish the SAR ball off and you do not want them to retreat out, then I get it. Or if you're just sick of Nalu doing their shenanigans or whatever. But yeah, I think that's why this one kind of ends up being lower, is because actually, since a retreat is technically a loss, you don't need to block a retreat that often.
I mean, I think where we're at kind of in the list right now is there's a lot of cards like this, right? Where it's like not really useful all the time, but when it is useful, it's going to be like super clutch. So it's a very difficult card to classify, and I could totally see people saying that it deserves to be higher and lower than it is, basically.
Right.
I'm just going and
it's
anticipating
just
that. But
it belongs kind of everywhere.
Right, but where it is for now and forever is obviously number 33.
Number 33, right. I want to throw out one thing, too, about it, just as an ability, compared to some other action cards that are sort of like, oh, a faction just does that ability. I wish this was a faction ability, like the opposite of Nalu.
Yeah.
A faction that's just like, you don't get to go anywhere.
You don't get to retreat.
You know, spend a trade good, spend 2 trade goods, whatever the cost is, spend a strategy counter. But, like, I get to force you not to get to retreat.
Ooh,
I think that would be a dope faction.
Really, really like that. That's a great idea, Matt. You gotta, maybe next week, right?
I have another amazing faction idea, and it's based off of our next action card. I can't wait to tell you about this crazy faction ability.
Number 32.
Maneuvering jets. Before you assign hits produced by another player's space cannon roll, you cancel 1 hit. So, like, I don't know, it's like a faction that, like, you don't
can cancel a hit of PDS.
PDS is bad. No, okay, but let's talk about maneuvering jets for a second.
All right.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's good.
It's good.
It's fine. I think it's the definition of like it's fine. It's not going to change your life, but it's a pretty solid card. It's useful. I feel like. As compared to Intercept that we were just talking about, maneuvering jets, obviously you can use all the time. It is. I do sometimes wish it just didn't exist, and that shield holding was for just hits.
Was for both.
Yeah,
right.
was just all the way. I do sometimes.
It's one of those
feel
ones
that
that
way.
confuses players. People think they can use maneuvering jets in combat and think they can use shield holding in space cannon. But that's sort of the other problem too with it is, you know, in most instances of space cannon, it's 2 or 3 shots, and you canceled 1 of them.
Right.
It's very rare that the PDS was the decisive factor in the fight. Now, obviously, there are situations where it is, and it's a big deal to have that maneuvering jets, and so that's why it gets ranked a little bit high. You know, it's less situational than Intercept. It's still a very good card, and it's really good in certain situations, and it's decent in other situations.
Yeah, I've definitely pulled off maneuvers solely because of of maneuvering jets. I have definitely claimed some tough like control objectives just because a cruiser was able to get somewhere and maneuvering jets a PDS shot, basically.
Right. And I can't decide if this is one where the fact that there are 4 of them makes it a better card or not. You know what I mean? With all of the 4 ofs.
Yeah.
There's enough of them in play that it's like, you can't
you can't use 2 of them
you can't use 2 of them back to back.
Yeah.
In the same instance, and since you're only rolling space cannon once.
Right.
You know, the difference is shield holding. You can have 2 shield holding and use it in 2 separate rounds of combat. And you're just going to keep, you keep chucking through them. But maneuvering jets, if you have 2 maneuvering jets, it's like, I guess I have just like huge amounts of Like, it's just two. It's more than you need. You never need 2 maneuvering jets.
Right.
You could use 2 shields holding.
Yeah. You could have 4 shields holding, and I'd be down with that. I would not be happy if I had 4 maneuvering jets. There are situations where I could imagine being happy having 2. If there are 2, maybe
if my neighbor's extra.
Right. If my neighbor's extra,
and they're like constantly a pain in my.
Well, see,
side.
actually, that's the thing though. What is kind of sad about maneuvering jets is I don't feel like it is useful against extra because extra normally has
they have too many shots.
There's too many shots for canceling 1 hit to probably make a difference. Although I don't know. I mean, throw me that situation and we'll see. But
Right.
I don't know. I think it's a good card, and I think it belongs exactly where it is. Just kind of, right there in the who knows in the middle, 32 forever and always.
Yeah. But I think it's important to counter talking about maneuvering jets with our number 31 card.
Yeah, emergency repairs at the start of at the start or end of a combat round. Repair all of your units that have sustained damage in the active system. This one can be devastating. Like this card
can be devastating,
and
in a sense too, it is a maneuvering jets, right? Like if you're the faction that's coming into a fight with a couple dreadnoughts, okay, you take 1 PDS shot on your dreadnought 2s, you tap it, then you emergency repairs, and you're fine. It's the same. Now you wouldn't necessarily want to use emergency repairs to heal 1 dreadnought. You could, and it would be a fine use of that card, but the reason emergency repairs is a little bit better is because you can do way more than just heal 1 dreadnought. You can heal all of your dreadnoughts, and if it's the right attack, this can really catch someone off guard. And the fact that it is at the start of a combat round or end of a combat round, you can do it in either timing window, which means it has a lot of flexibility in terms of what other abilities can get used against it. The main thing I'm thinking about is like if you're up against a Yin actually has trouble dealing with fighting against emergency repairs because they can use it. You can sacrifice your destroyer after a combat round, but then at the start of the next combat round, they can just repair it right back up or whatever. All those sorts of things. It's a little bit tricky to deal with emergency repairs when you can do it at multiple timing windows. This is one of the few cards that has that part of it that it can be done basically at any moment. Like it's got multiple timing windows, and that's a huge factor in why this card does a lot better than if it was just at the end of a combat round.
Yeah, it also obviously stacks with Barony in a way that is literally like unholy, I would say.
Right.
Completely disgusting, the amount of hits that you could potentially soak if you had an emergency repairs. Yeah, this card I feel like is a little bit similar to Intercept, except even more solidly like this, and that it's the potential of the card as far as its usefulness could go from like to, oh my god, this was the best card.
That decided the game. That decided the fight. That decided the game, etc. Like that. Yeah, it can be a clutch card.
It's also not in people's heads, I feel like, to automatically sabotage it, which I don't know if that is just if how much that makes sense.
Yeah, we're kind of in that. We are in the sweet spot of like, I'm not going to sabotage that. Right. Unless it's this, like, emergency repairs, it's like, I just repaired 4 dreadnoughts. And if I'm Barony with NES, like, that's a huge deal. So you probably should consider sabotaging it. But your gut reaction is never, I need to sabotage that emergency repair.
Right,
That's just not the thought anybody has first.
And I always wonder if that even if that even makes sense, as far as, do people even think that way? Like, do people get thrown off by stuff like that? I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential for someone to be like, oh, wait, I guess I should have sabotaged that, but it doesn't really occur to them. Because honestly, it's a card that I forget, actually, that this one is in the deck
I do too.
A lot of times.
Yeah. Just like I forget that Intercept is in the deck a lot of the times.
Right.
Both cards are just so situational but strong when they're important that you don't think about them until it's like it'll have been like 5 games since the last time that card came out, and then it comes out and you're like, whoa, that just completely changed the dynamic of everything that's going on right now. Why doesn't that happen every game? It's like, well, because it's pretty situational. It's not a very common thing for its moment to shine.
Well, let's talk
about number 30.
Bunker. At the start of an invasion. During this invasion, apply -4 to the result of each bombardment roll against planets you control. This is, think about how often you are trying to take a planet and you don't quite have enough infantry, and the bombardment is really what's going to decide the fight. This is that
Clutch.
situation is why this is such a good card, because I feel like that happens so often. Bombardment is always the wiggle room of like invasion combat, basically, and this shuts it down.
I think the reason this card is placed perfectly at number 30 is because it's not like your disables or other cards like that. Like the fact that it doesn't stop a bombardment, but instead applies -4 to the bombardment is a very interesting design choice. And so in essence, what it does is it takes dreadnoughts, standard dreadnoughts, from a 5 to a 9, but that means there's still a 1 in 5 chance to hit.
Right.
It's not like you've completely eliminated any, if this card were completely block a bombardment, that's a very different card than what this is. And then especially too, if you use it against, a Muat with 1 War Sun, you turn their 3s into 7s. I mean, that hurts, but like it's still a 7. That's pretty. It's decent enough odds to get some bombardment done. So I think it gets knocked down a few pegs purely because it's not a full stop on any sort of bombardment.
Right, but it's not as bad as Plague, where the odds are like really bad. Although I guess if they were bringing a War Sun and you played Bunker, those are still pretty decent odds that they're going to get something.
Right.
So it's interesting that you bring up Disable too, because why isn't it just like Bombardment is canceled? Like they cannot bombard.
Right. There's plenty of other cards where that is a thing. It's so much more common. Well, honestly, it's weird because just in general in TI4, pluses and minuses aren't that common. You do have morale boost and fighter like you have a few instances of it, but compared to TI3, every single thing in TI3 was like a plus or minus, and you had to have the app on your phone just to keep track of what everyone's units were going to be hitting at. And this feels like kind of a remnant of that time of like, okay, this one's the -4. It's a big deal, when most other things got retranslated into TI4 as just a yes or no instead of a variation of how much power the thing now does. So it feels like an old action card.
Yeah, like kind of a leftover thing. Yeah. I feel like it has never, like it always feels like there's a lot of potential in it, but I don't know that it's ever saved my butt. But what I do like about it is that it is for each bombardment roll against planets you control. So that it can, if you're talking 2-planet system or Hakon's home system, that's a lot of bombardment that it's hurting. And if it's clutch, I mean, it will. If it was going to be a close call, I think Bunker would totally make the difference. But it's like you're saying, there's still that room left for it to not even save the day, basically.
Right. The reason I feel like I have to make a case for why it still got ahead of emergency repairs, because we just talked up emergency repairs a lot. We were very we think it's really dope. Well, because Bunker, when someone takes a planet from someone else, that's a much bigger deal than when you win the space combat. Winning a space combat is one thing, but acquiring a planet is a huge deal. And if you can completely stop someone from taking a planet from you because you stopped their bombardment, very often that costs them a point, or it kept you a point. There's way more victory points on the line when Bunker gets played compared to when emergency repairs gets played.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's sort of what pushes it one step above into the perfect placement of number 30.
Right. Yeah. Emergency repairs is just going to help you with the space combat, and it's not always going to be a super important space combat, but people pretty much only invade planets for points, or just important reasons to deny. So Bunker's basically almost always going to be used in like a pretty clutch situation. So let's talk about number 29.
Unstable planet. Action: choose one hazardous planet, period, space, exhaust that planet, and destroy up to 3 infantry on it. I did that because it's a very confusing card.
Why did you specifically say period space?
Why is that important? Currently, and we sort of covered this last week, but the ruling currently on Unstable Planet is the activity of Unstable Planet is to choose a hazardous planet. Then the exhaust that planet and destroy 3 infantry on it, those two things are now the effects that, because of the and in that sentence, means you don't have to do all of them. You can do just one of them.
Right.
So choosing a hazardous planet is the only requirement. There's a difference between Unstable Planet and Uprising, where Uprising, the planet has to be unexhausted because the action is exhausting the planet. Here, if the planet is already exhausted, that is okay. You can still destroy infantry on it.
Yeah.
Now, technically speaking, you can even it can be exhausted and there can be no infantry on it. And you still technically are allowed to select it. This can be a stall, as far as my understanding. I'm sure right now we're getting all of the errata to tell me that I'm wrong in this instance, and I hate these sort of interactions that are so minute and based on like where a specific period is placed. So I'll totally take it if I'm wrong that the planet doesn't like if the planet can have no infantry on it and be exhausted and you can still play on stable planet. That's my understanding of it right now. And if I'm wrong, I concede. Thank you for your input.
No. I say if he's wrong, then we're actually right in general, and that unstable planet will now and forever be 29, and that it will always be understood to be exactly what we just said it was. I think the reason it's at number 29 is that it has such juicy potential in the late game that we have seen, I feel like, so many times at this point.
Right.
It does feel really limited. It's only a hazardous planet, right? But
what are hazardous planets?
Right.
Almost entirely high influence planets, and 2 of them are tech skips.
Yeah. So the hazardous planets are just so dang juicy, all of them. And because of that, they're almost always going to be a juicy target for any number of reasons. Some of them being victory point, counter. Like that's what's so weird about Unstable Planet is it feels like, whatever. But then it's like, wow, this you could literally play this card and cost somebody a game, basically.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Which, we've seen that so many times.
Right, and the flip side of it is, I mean, you're killing 3 infantry with just like 1 action card. Compare that to the bunker, where okay, we're protecting some infantry, but maybe still a couple get killed. This 100% kills 3 infantry.
Yep.
Even compare it to Plague. Plague, as long as they have 6 ground forces, you have that good of odds to get 3 of them killed with Plague. Right, but they have to have 6 already there. If they had 3 infantry on a planet and you played Plague, more often you're going to kill 1, maybe 2 of those infantry. So this card, just by existing, is already significantly better than Plague.
Right.
Just because of what it is. And so killing 3 infantry is also a huge deal because that usually softens it up enough to where you're going to have a very decisive victory. It's very rare for a planet to have 4+ ground forces. That's really like a sole Arborec thing you see.
Sure.
Maybe Yin.
Or just Mechatol in general.
Right? Mechatol.
Yeah.
But beyond that, any other planet is usually lightly defended, 2 or 3 ground forces, and this turns it into nothing, and then your next turn you get to just sweep in and do away with it or whatever.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Multiple uses, multiple ways that it can impact the game, and confusing enough to make people not see it coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, what's next? What's next, buddy boy?
Number 28.
Leadership Writer. After an agenda is revealed, you cannot vote on this agenda, predict aloud an outcome of this agenda. If your prediction is correct, gain 3 command tokens. So it gives you leadership.
Yep.
Command tokens are great. It's always good to get. That's one of the best resources in the game is command tokens.
Yeah.
This is actually literally worth a stage 1 victory point.
Right.
It's also kind of in that Goldilocks zone. I think this is going to be
contentious.
Oh, really? Oh, why do you say that?
Keep going. Keep talking. Well, I want you to finish all your points.
It's in the Goldilocks zone of a rider that is not super going to swing. It's basically not Imperial rider and it's not political rider, which means that it can get thrown down and you might get it. You know what I mean? It's not a oh my god, we have to swing everything the other way.
Nobody loves that someone's going to score a leadership rider, but it's very rare that people are like, there's no way we can let them get that leadership rider, like you're saying. Yeah, it is kind of the most perfect example of that. We kind of said that about Trade Rider. Trade Rider is the main one people just kind of shrug off and are like, oh, that sucks, but whatever. This one is more like, oh crap. Well, good for them. That's great for, I feel like so often I see Leadership Rider played when it is the sure thing. The Imperial Rider got played against, boom, perfect time to do Leadership Rider 4.
Right.
Because people will let you definitely have those 3 command counters despite it being like a pretty great advantage for them.
Yeah.
But this one is buttoned up right next to something, and this is where I think it's going to be contentious. So I want to jump right into talking about number 27, Technology Writer, after an agenda is revealed, do all the prediction stuff, and gain research 1 technology. So why are we putting Technology Writer above Leadership Writer? There are people, Hunter, out there that have math done about how much a single command counter is worth and how much 1 tech is worth. And I'm pretty sure their math works out to 3 command counters is greater than 1 technology.
Well, the thing about technology, so Leadership Writer, you always get the same thing. You get 3 command tokens. Technology Writer, you get a tech, and not all techs are created equal. So that means that there's a lot more variance as to what this could mean for the game,
right?
Basically.
Absolutely.
There are times a technology
Sometimes
writer...
it's not a big deal.
Right. It depends on who's playing it. And if it's if they're going to get something out of step, like I'm thinking more like factions that have a lot of really juicy tech, but aren't necessarily always going to be doing well in tech. Like if I were to see like a Sardak get like, I don't know, like a Dreadnought 2 or something like that off of a technology writer, I would be a little bit upset because it's like Sardak, their thing is that they're supposed to be slow in tech. We've actually seen a lot of Sardak lately in tournament games that are really doing well in tech. But yeah, it just depends on what they're going to get. So I think it's kind of the most difficult one to classify because depending on the faction, depending on the situation in the game, technology writer could be it could be a complete no-go, or it could be like whatever, who cares?
Right. What's also interesting to me, kind of going back to leadership writer, is comparing it to the action card summit, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I want to start building the case, and we'll bring it back up when we get to summit. But leadership writer equals 3 command counters, and we haven't seen summit yet, and summit we know equals 2 command counters.
Right, but summit just equals 2 command counters. Right.
So I want to plant that seed right now, and we will bring up that point again. But just don't forget, we're not done talking about leadership writer. But instead, let's jump into number 26, Lost Star Chart. After you activate a system during this tactical action, systems that contain alpha and beta wormholes are adjacent to each other. It's a ghosts for a turn action card.
It's a pretty cool card because of its potential to shake things up in the last round. I feel like that's solely why it's up as high as it is.
We're getting into those cards. I feel like this is the first technology writer hints at this, and this is the first card where we're getting into, oh, that's a game maker. That's you did the play. You needed that action card specifically, and you needed it to not get sabotaged. But because it was a success, you win the game.
Right.
We're in this territory now with pretty much the rest of these action cards.
Right, but Lost Star Chart is, again, sort of like what we were talking about with emergency repairs. It's not a card that people think, like, people don't knee-jerk sabotage it, but it can totally be for the game. So if the table is not paying attention and you're playing Lost Star Chart for the win, I think there's totally a lot of times that people have gotten away with it. Which is kind of a weird factor to be going into this, but like we said, this is completely definitive, and Lost Star Chart is now and forever number 26, and there is no debate. It is. I'm gonna write number 26 on every Lost Star Chart I see that from now on.
Silver Sharpie.
Yep.
What I think is interesting, the difficulty with Lost Star Chart is a few different factors, right? In some cases, Lost Star Chart is more powerful than In the Silence of Space and Flank Speed combined. If the wormholes are in the right positions and what you need to get, if all you need to do is go from the alpha to the beta and get to where you need to be, and you never would have been in that system in any other circumstance, Lost Star Chart is amazing. But more often than not, the wormholes are a little bit gummed up. People like to hang out in them, especially, obviously, Lodor and Quan. With the planets on them. So it's pretty hard usually to be able to go through those systems. So if you don't have Lightwave, Lost Star Chart has already lost some utility because connecting the wormholes doesn't matter if the wormholes are gummed up.
Right.
And even more so, you have to be the player that received Star Chart, and you have to be the player that benefits from going through the wormholes like that. So it's one of those ones where the circumstances of it being amazing are much rarer, actually. It can be like we said, it can be a game crusher. But more often than not, if people have kind of messed up the wormholes enough, it ends up being a good play, but it doesn't change the whole status of the game.
Yeah, it's wild.
Right.
It's hard to tell exactly what you're going to see out of this card. And yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's just completely useless. And sometimes if you didn't have it, then you could not have won, basically. It also, I mean, I know we talked about this in the part 1 up, but I just want to bring it back up. It does allow you to bypass the agenda that closes the wormholes, which is really cool.
Yes, definitely very cool. Let's get into our top 25, and I think this card is a perfect one to be a part of the top 25. This is such a game changer. Like, we've hit a new plateau. Number 25, direct hit. After another player's ships use sustained damage to cancel a hit produced by your units, destroy that ship. There's 4 of these in the deck, and they should be a big deal, right? They're typically kind of a big deal.
Well, you think about them all the time, don't you? I mean, like, basically everybody's always thinking about direct hit. I think in TI3, direct hit would have been much higher on this list. Although TI3, there were so many action cards, so I don't know.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's the major action card that got nerfed a little bit by Dreadnought 2, obviously.
Yep. Right.
But the times that it's still useful are really important times. Flagships, right?
Yep.
Flagships are worth a point. Flagships are just a point you're putting on the board, I'm realizing lately. I don't even know why people build them. Now that I think about it, they suck, and you should never build them.
You just gave someone else a point by placing that unit. Yeah, and this card is, I want 1 free victory point, please. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, there's a lot of combats that will... people gamble. I've gambled and lost with the direct hit. I've been like, okay, I can win this combat if I sustain damage, but they might have a direct hit, and then I take the chance, and they do have a direct hit. I would say that this card is the main gamble mechanic in the entire game. I can't think of anything in the game that feels more like, I guess I'm gonna try this. I hope this is okay. Let's see. And yeah, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. I can't think of anything that makes you kind of like tense up more than risking getting a direct hit jumped on you. Yeah, totally. What I also like about it is that you can use it like functionally with PDS as well. So like that's always really cool, because PDS is also something that people really would rather sustain in most cases. Exactly. You would much rather sustain a PDS hit than actually take
because
it
you
on
need
something.
every hit for the you need that first round of combat, so you want to keep everything you can. And direct hitting during Space Cannon is incredibly devastating.
Also, people forget that you can do that a lot, because the logic for defensive action cards is the opposite, where there's shields holding for most stuff and then maneuvering jets just for PDS, but direct hit is has more flexibility, which is good. Also, last week we didn't touch on this, and I know this kind of got brought up in some Errata type discussion, but direct hit is the really annoying outlier in the situations where you can't play 2 cards of the same name at the same timing, right? I can't block 4 hits by playing 2 shields holding in the exact same window. Right. But when I assign a hit to my Dreadnought, you can play a direct hit. And then in that same round of combat where you got 3 hits, I can also assign a hit to my flagship, and that is a different hit being assigned, which means you can assign a direct hit to that as well. Sure. Even though it's sort of almost within the same timing window, technically you are assigning hits at different intervals, which means you could play 4 direct hits in a row if the player had 4 ships that they sustained damage all in one. So really weird caveat with direct hit compared to the general consensus on how that rule works. And that makes it even better. I mean, it's one of those cards that having 2 in your hand is not bad. It's typically okay to do it. And this is certainly one of the ones people count. Not as much as things like Sabotage, but there's 4 of them, and that increases the quality of it a lot, because there's really good chances that people have it. That's why people are so afraid of it. It's not just because it's a huge devastating effect, but it's like there's just such good odds that someone's, by round 5, it's like, oh, somebody definitely has a direct hit. Yeah, we just have to figure out who it is. For sure. Are we ready to talk about number 24? I'm so ready. Give it to me. Disable. At the start of an invasion in a system that contains 1 or more of your opponent's PDS units, your opponent's PDS units lose Planetary Shield and Space Cannon during this invasion. It is the flip side of Bunker. You actually get something for sure. Like, you just get it. Right.
You get to block
You disabled those PDS.
This could have easily been worded minus whatever to Space Cannon and then block Planetary Shield. But the fact that they just stopped it all off is a huge deal. Especially, I mean, I think this one in terms of like someone who has done a really good defense on Mechatol, disable don't care. Home system, disable don't care.
Right.
Just like there's so many instances where you see disable come out, and again, that situation where we talked about bunker is good because you're preventing them from getting a point or keeping your own point. This is the inverse of that. You are saying you thought you had this defended, but I'm getting this point, and you are screwed now. When used properly, obviously you can use a disable and then still only be invading with like a really low chance to win or whatever. But when you use it right, the PDS was the only thing holding you back. You just opened up your opportunity to bombard, and you opened up your opportunity to not lose ground forces on the invasion. So I think this is a huge deal card. Honestly, I think it's even kind of generally undervalued. I think it's one of those ones that, you don't see the clutch play of it every single game. It's not like disable comes out every game in a monumental way like other action cards do. But I think it's often enough that like it's a big deal card.
Yeah. I mean, it has a card that's very similar to it that just destroys the PDS, and I think both Disable and Cripple Defenses are two cards that I think about a lot. Like, I think about them coming up. I will think about, like, oh, but what if they have Disable, basically.
Yeah.
If I'm playing a Mechatol Rex faction and I'm on Mechatol Rex, Disable is one of those really scary things that I think about.
Yes, definitely.
It's a card that you're going to... It's one of those cards that you can kind of anticipate seeing at some point, and if there's a target for it, it will probably get used, basically.
Yeah.
And there's almost always
number 23.
Yeah.
Sorry. Number 23. Shields holding. Before you assign hits to your ships during a space combat, cancel up to 2 hits. 2 hits is what makes this crazy good, honestly, because most ships have a somewhat low combat value. You know, even your 7s. 7 is an okay combat value, and then you've got mostly fighters and stuff that are hitting on 9s.
Right.
So in an average combat round, you're only getting like 2 hits. So this is saving you an entire combat round, is what Shields holding typically does. I mean, I don't feel like if someone scored 5 or 6 hits in their first round of combat, you don't even play Shields holding, because it's like, well, that's it. I mean, why would I'm not going to save anything. But in all the combats where it's like, okay, we've got 3 fighters and a carrier versus a destroyer and 4 fighters or whatever it is, like, one combat round can make all the difference in the world, and 2 hits is enough to save your butt.
Yeah, I think we've all been there where Shields holding has saved our butt in a space combat, because 2 hits is just enough, I think, wiggle room to swing a fight in wildly in the other direction, basically. It's crazy good. The big factor of it being there's 4 of them, so it constantly comes up. And then if you're playing, in a game with a Sarl or just lots of action draw, these start coming back up again. I mean, it just feels like you're never getting rid of all the Shields holding. It's not one of those ones that I count. Ooh, did we get... Okay, that was our 3rd Shield holding. Let's worry about it. But it is one that I feel like should be counted a little bit more, because it can kind of decide a space combat. If this could be used in ground combat, if there was a card equivalent, that would be like one of the best combat abilities, I think, in the game. Like combat action totally
cards,
agree.
It would be completely insane. But alas, we just have our wonderful little Shields holding.
It's interesting, like with Shields holding, it's another case of like the action cards all have slightly different logics. Like there's, like we were just talking about direct hit, how you can play like you can play a direct hit for every hit assigned. Well, you don't do Shields holding that way. There's so many little, like you couldn't play 2 Shields holding to cancel up to 4 hits. You cancel up to 2 hits. That's it. And for Shields holding, we're treating all of the assigning hits as like a window altogether, whereas direct hit is one at a time. I just wanted to call out that these cards all have wildly different logics, and that's why they are so confusing for not even new players in general. It's all the time.
For anyone. I mean, because every single action card has its own. We have clearly pointed out like numerous times now of where like a specific rule in the rule book really only applies to like one single action card. So there are rules in the rule book that, maybe more action cards come out that are in the same timing window, but currently with our current deck of action cards, there's so many things that only apply to one moment that ever happens. And we have to account for that. And yeah, the disparity between shields holding, maneuvering jets, direct hit, all of that is like such a weird little ecosystem that is not hard to mess up.
All right, well, let's talk about the next card. What's the next one?
Number 22, Summit. At the start of the strategy phase, gain 2 command tokens. This is another one of those annoying ones for a moderator. Until it gets played every round, I have to be like, it is now officially the start of the strategy phase. Does anybody care about that? But it's a really good card, and it is one of the ones that I think in your first 4 or 5 games, you forget to play it all the time, right? But then once you see how big of an impact it has on your game, you never forget it ever again. Like it's a big, as soon as you get it, like, oh yes, I can't wait for the start of a strategy phase. This is going to be so great for me. Because 2 command counters is nothing to be balked at. It's a big deal.
It can make a huge difference as far as especially the timing of it, that it happens at the start of the strategy phase. If I'm like really command counter starved and I don't want to take leadership and I draw Summit, it like changes my life. Like I'm just like, oh my God, thank you.
Yes.
It's also in the Goldilocks zone of like a card that's pretty good, always gets you something. That's good. Always gets you these command tokens. And I think if someone sabotaged it, I would just be happy that they wasted their sabotage, basically.
Right.
So I feel like you always get
that is worth
something.
a burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about Leadership Rider earlier. So the difference here is Leadership Rider, it's 1 more command token, but it is kind of significantly less chance of you getting that. This is 100% chance of getting 2 command tokens versus whatever percent chance of getting a Leadership Rider. And that factor has to be taken into consideration. And the timing of it is great, honestly. The fact that it's start of strategy phase is helpful because here's the scenario I kind of want to paint. At the end of the status phase, you are redistributing your command tokens. Well, in between the strategy or the status phase and the strategy phase, usually there's an agenda phase, and a lot of things can change values in the agenda phase. If Summit was at the end of the status phase, gain 2 additional, like when you gain and redistribute, gain 2 more, it would not be quite as good of a card.
Yeah.
The fact that it lets you reinterpret what happened during the agenda phase and go, okay, 2 more command tokens, and now I need to put this here instead. I need to reconsider. Sometimes speaker order changes during the agenda phase. So Summit is a huge deal because it gives you an opportunity to counterbalance problems that come up in the agenda phase. And you don't have to, it's just, I wish there were more cards that were timing window of strategy phase, because that's a useful timing window. Before anything's been determined for the next round, but after dealing with all the craziness of the last agenda phase.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel like I've seen somebody get a leadership rider in the agenda phase and then follow it up with Summit at the beginning of the strategy phase for a whopping 5 command tokens, which is crazy. That's just like, oh, cool, I'm good for the next 2 rounds.
Right.
Pretty great. Are we ready to talk about number 21? All right, number 21, Frontline deployment action. Place 3 infantry from your reinforcements on 1 planet you control. Oh, I love that openness. You get something for sure.
Juicy.
You get it wherever you want it.
Yep.
Love it.
It's better than Soul's ability. You don't have to spend a command counter for it. It is a stall. It's everything. It's everything your heart wants from an action card in TI4, right? I mean, this is literally like a perfect action phase card.
Yep.
There's a few more that are even more perfect. We're going to get to those, but this is where we're getting into the, like, these are impossible to misuse, I feel like.
They're always
even if it's not the best planet you could have put it on, wherever you put 3 ground forces, it's good. That's a good idea to put them there. I mean, you could have put them somewhere else, but that you just put 3 ground forces on a planet.
Right.
Kudos. Like, it is always good.
Yeah, it's Hunter's Law. That's kind of making it. It's third. It's
Haven't
it's
talked about
second
that
comeback.
in a while.
Yeah, but now we've also already done that. Haven't talked about that in a while bit, and now we're doing it again. So it's coming back.
Wow,
I love it though. I always love front. I actually feel like I have a soft spot for this card, and that I would have put it in like my personal top 10, not for a good reason, but just because. Obviously it's number 21 now and forever, but
yes, it's a great reason. Yes,
but I do like it a lot. Especially if I'm playing a faction that doesn't do good at infantry. Like if I'm playing like Barony, Mm-hmm. And then I get to throw
really
a
helpful.
frontline deployment down somewhere. Really, really love it. Really, really love it.
But even for the ones that do, I mean, a frontline deployment in round like 1 or 2 for Arborek is the wildest thing ever. Every time, it's just like, oh, we're screwed. We're doomed. We're all in trouble now because one of their worst like starting problems just got solved with a single action card.
Yeah, it's a card that like it's only worth 3 infantry, but I could see people sabotaging it if the situation was
spot.
right. But it's just 3 infantry. But it's just the fact that you can put them wherever you want. Like, it's always like we've said, the problem with infantry isn't like, it's obviously easy to build them and they're cheap. The problem is that you have to take care of them. They're like little babies, and you have to get them to where they need to go, and they have to be in the right spot. And frontline deployment is just so great at that. Like, no, just plop them down.
Right. Yeah. It's the most useful thing in the world to just be able to put them wherever. Number 20, Cripple defenses. Action, choose 1 planet, destroy each PDS on that planet.
Yeah.
That's a doozy. Now, obviously, you're only supposed to have up to 2 PDS per planet. So usually this is killing a max of 2 PDS. Almost always it's just 1, right? Mm-hmm. It's very rare for people to put 2 PDS on a single planet.
Sure.
But even still, this is essentially a more permanent version of Disable.
Yep.
And it's a stall.
Right, and it's a stall, which is great. It's one of the many action cards that is difficult for Winu to deal with. It will destroy Winu's free PDS on Mechatol.
Right.
As if Winu needed more things against them. I feel like what's worth noting is that I really like Cripple defenses. It's really useful against most factions that would build PDS, except for I will say that it's not going to make that much of a difference against an extra, because if an extra is playing their cards right, they have their flagship out, or they at least probably have more than 1 PDS or 1 planet even with PDS on it. So
right. What's really fun about this one though is this is in many cases this is the VP blocker too.
Yes.
The second one person puts their 4th PDS on the ground, you just go, all right, I'm gonna kill that now, because maybe they don't have it, but they probably do have the 4 PDS secret objective. So it's this action card is just designed to keep someone from getting a secret that is annoying to get. Like getting those construction-oriented, getting 3 space docks or getting 4 PDS on the table is super annoying in TI4, because you have to either play a strategy card that you don't really love playing, or you got to hope someone else takes it just so that you can do the secondary, and probably they'll play it in a timing window you don't like.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So everything to do with space docks and PDS is annoying, and if someone kills your 4th PDS after you just spent 4 rounds trying to get that 4th PDS out, and now you need to spend another round just to do it, what else are you going to do? I mean, it's just such a nuisance. This is one of those ones where there's a lot of situations where I can see it getting sabotaged, even though all it's doing is killing 1 PDS. It's like, given any other circumstances, why would you ever sabotage that card? But it's like, well, because it's so, I have to backtrack so much if I lose this 4th PDS. Mm-hmm. It's a nightmare scenario.
I would say that this card and Reactor Meltdown are the main reasons that my personal policy, and I think strategically it makes sense, is if you draw a secret objective that is the construction-oriented ones, the 4 PDS or the 3 space docks, you have to go for it right away. And if it's late game, sometimes I would just be like, I don't know that you're going to get that. Because if we're late game and a lot of people have neural, like it's almost like 100% chance sometimes that one of those 2 cards is going to be out there. And no one has a reason not to play it. Now, sometimes, your players aren't paying that much attention and whatever. But if they are, I mean, my personal policy would be like, oh, yeah, your 3rd space dock, okay, meltdown that. Your 4th PDS, cripple that, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Number 19, courageous to the end after one of your ships is destroyed during a space combat. Roll 2 dice. For each result equal to or greater than the ship's combat value, your opponent must choose and destroy one of his ships.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Very good. Man.
Works with Necro. Remember, Matt?
It works with Necro. Yeah,
I'm just reminding you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Know.
Thank you for
Necro gets
Necro
tech
can
off
do
that.
the thing. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy that it's destroy. It's crazy that it's doubling the impact of. I mean, like you only use this on dreadnoughts, pretty much. This is like such a great card when you're a dreadnought faction of any kind. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you roll 2 dice with 60% chance to destroy 2 ships. Now, obviously there's certain fights where it's like, oh, well, okay, they lost 2 fighters, it didn't do anything. But when you play Courageous to the end, you're a smart player, and you do it when you know it's going to cost them dearly.
Right.
And that's the big deal. When they haven't sustained their flagship the whole combat, and now all they have left is a fully, unsustained flagship and 1 fighter, and you do crippled defenses, and now they're going to lose both. They just had to account for 3 hits.
Yeah.
Despite otherwise thinking they were going to unveil their flagship, you just blocked a point and maybe scored one of your own. You destroyed their flagship in the meantime. Like it's a big card, and I feel like every time it gets played, it's a huge deal.
Now I will say this.
Obviously, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you miss.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say this is probably the highest card we have that has the besides some of the riders that are left. This is the highest card I think that could not get you anything.
Right.
But the fact that it's just the way that the card is structured, that it's like you've destroyed a ship, you're rolling 2 dice. It's a lot of like it's completely unexpected to the other player. But yeah, there is a chance that it won't work. But it's such a juicy situation that it would be.
I think this one gets its bonus points because of how thematic it is.
Yeah.
Compare this to Plague, right? Plague, 50% chance of killing a bunch of ground forces. That should be a big deal. But I hate it, and I don't think it's a big deal because it kind of happens outside of the story of the game. It just kind of like happens, and it hurt them a little bit, but they'll probably be able to recover. Courageous to the end, when you nuke 2, ships from your opponent in the middle of a decisive battle, that's a big thematic impact moment. And so, I think this one gets bonus points just because when Courageous to the End gets dropped on the table, the whole table goes, oh no, here we go, what's gonna happen? Like, it has that impact. And so sometimes, yes, it whiffs and does nothing, but sometimes it is justified in why everyone started screaming and freaking out.
Yeah. Good card, clutch card. Let's talk about number 18. Infiltrate. When you gain control of a planet, replace each PDS and space dock that is on that planet with a matching unit from your reinforcements. So you get to be
Remember how
L1 for a day. L1 for a day, I call it.
And L1 is a good faction.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to Ghost of Creus, which I'm not suggesting Ghost is a bad faction, but Lost Star Chart we said is you get to be Ghost for a day. But Ghosts are a tricky, weird faction that is hard to use. This is a good ability that is good to use and is copying the ability of a good faction. Like everything about it is net benefit, basically.
Yeah, and you can get so much done. I mean, just the idea that you are getting a PDS and space dock, or PDS and space dock, or 2 PDS and a space dock outside of the normal construction rotation, just that in and of itself is wonderful. The fact that you're taking it away from somebody else, that's magical, basically.
Right. And the fact that the timing window is such that you can immediately build out of that space dock is absolutely untenable.
Yeah.
It's just wild that they are allowed to do this because not only did you just win a combat and take a planet from somebody and take 2 of their structures that were very hard for them to build, but you just reinforced the ever-loving bejesus out of that planet. Like it's they're never ever getting it back because of this one action card.
It can be a card that can really shape like an entire round or 2 basically around it. I would say the downside of this card is that sometimes there's just not really a very good opportunity to infiltrate, which is also just kind of a problem with L1. Sometimes you just never get to use that ability. But I would say
people just aren't building space docks and PDS outside their home system.
Sure, that does happen. That does happen. So I mean, I think if you're getting to use it, then it's 100% always going to be worth it and useful.
Yeah.
However, you might not always have an opportunity.
Right. So, it's one of those cards that sometimes it just sits in your hand.
Yeah.
I like the way you're putting that. Like the difference between being sometimes Courageous to the End whiffs, and then you've used it and it whiffed. That sucks. But with Infiltrate, if you're not using it, it's still in your hand. It's never going to whiff.
Right.
It's always going to have the benefit it advertises.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of another variable in the way that I feel like we're evaluating this, which is like Courageous to the End. It's a bummer that you don't get something for sure that it might whiff. But but you're always going to get a chance to use it. Whereas Infiltrate, I mean, I've definitely had games where Infiltrate sat in my hand and I never got to do anything with it. So, I mean, that's just another factor. What's the next one we want to talk about?
Number 17.
Whoa. Oh,
was this unexpected for you? Hunt,
oh yeah, sorry.
I
forgot that number 17 was the next number after 18.
Yeah,
so
that's
crazy.
because I played unexpected action. Action, remove one of your command tokens from the board and return it to your reinforcements.
Huge, obviously huge, super huge.
Yeah,
really big.
Because people don't see it. People in late rounds, people think about unexpected action, but you never know who's going to have it. Right. You never know where it's going to come from. And it's almost always like a game. It always is a game changer.
Yeah.
If you're playing unexpected action, it's because you need to completely do this thing right now, and it's going to change how many points you have, and it's going to be a big deal. It's warfare outside of the confines of having warfare. So, yeah, it's the most unexpected action card.
Right. I remember I was playing a Goodyin Brotherhood game, and I had to use, it was that time, I think we've already talked about it in the show, but it's been a while, where somebody got into my home system to blockade my space dock, and they did it by using a skilled retreat. Like, they sent a weak fleet against one of my stronger fleets, and then skilled retreated into my home system because I didn't have any ships there, which was a mistake.
Right.
And then I remember this was like round 2 or 3, and I had to use unexpected action in order to
get your stuff
get
back.
my stuff back. But using an unexpected action in the early game really hurts because it's always a good card if you're using it, but it is, I think, meant as a late game, all right, here we go, this is the play. It's only possible because of unexpected action type card. And
so like the perfect scenario for unexpected action to paint like what Hunter's describing of like why you want it as a late game card is if you're Isarl and you have transparent steel plating, which means other people can't play cards against you. You do a bunch of stuff, then you stall and you stall and you stall, and we've seen this in many play of the weeks. You stall. Now everybody's passed. You play unexpected action. It is now illegal for anyone to sabotage your unexpected action.
Right.
You lift the command counter and you do the final action that wins you the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the level of import that unexpected action has on the game. It is very often the game winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that I bet it has a pretty high percentage of being the second to last action of the game, basically.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Second to last action of the game. I did unexpected action, and then the next turn, I won the board game.
Right. The game was over. What's next, baby?
Number 16, skilled retreat. At the start of a combat round, move all of your ships from the active system into the adjacent system that does not contain another player's ships. The space combat ends in a draw. Then, place a command token from your reinforcements in that system.
What a weird
It's a little
card.
bit like Foresight. It's a weird card. Mm-hmm. Dan Beltrami has gone on record of saying he wishes he had never said retreat was in the name of it because it's just specifically not a retreat and does not follow the same rules as retreat, even though it is incredibly similar to a retreat. So very confusing. There's 4 of them, which is wild.
Right. It is wild that there's 4. Like, it's such a crazy ability that there would be 4 of. Like, a lot of the 4 cards are like kind of meat and potatoes, like the first things you would think of like to do for action cards, whereas skilled retreat is a pretty specific thing. It's also weird that it creates a draw state, which we've talked about before, where we have different views as far as what the word draw means, whereas I think it means draw, whereas you think it means double loss.
No, I'm on board now. I just hate it. I just think it's not defined. It's not defined. Which I'm not gonna munchkin it. I'm not gonna be that person. I will concede to the rules, but I wouldn't be opposed if someday Dane was like a draw is 2 losses. But he already has said no. A draw is a third. The only reason we even talk about a draw is because of salvage operations with Mentak.
Right.
And it's just a really weird logic that Mentak can lose a fight and gain a trade good. They can win a fight and gain a trade good and build a ship. But if for some reason both of you kill each other's units, or if the other person uses a skilled retreat, Mentak doesn't gain anything off of their tech. That's just very, very strange logic. But this is not a faction tech episode. This is an action card episode.
Now that is weird.
Skilled retreat.
Yeah, that's odd.
It doesn't make any sense. But this is a big card because like this is another situation where people bank on killing a flagship or just really specific things. And the fact that it can be used offensively is what pushes it higher than the other cards where it's like, oh, well, if all it can do is help you kill a flagship, whatever. This is like, well, no, you can do really weird, slick maneuvers.
Very
with this
weird
as well.
stuff.
You can do scary stuff with this action card.
It's because you can retreat to anywhere that's unoccupied. You can go, which is great that it's that free. But it does allow you to potentially use it offensively. It allows you to use it just to get some extra movement, even you can almost use it like a really slow poor man's lightwave deflector. If there's empty space on the other side of a fleet, and then you're like, okay, well, I'll get over there. It's great that we have unexpected action and skilled retreat back to back, because as a combo, they would be literally insane.
But you don't even need the unexpected. I mean, skilled retreat with warfare is equally insane and not that hard to pull off. I mean, there's 4 of them in the deck. It's very common for someone to have warfare and probably have a skilled retreat in their hand. So there's a lot you can do with skilled retreat, so much so that it's like we can't even talk about all the different instances in which skilled retreat can be used to like really do some damage.
Yeah, skilled retreat.
But even defensively.
Yeah, there's like the intention of the intention like we know, but what it feels like the intention is, and then there's all the different weird ways that people can use it. Very interesting card. It's great that you get something for certain. It's even better that you can apply this use in a myriad of ways.
Right. Number 15, Veto. When an agenda is revealed, discard that agenda and reveal one agenda from the top of the deck. Players vote on this agenda instead. We haven't seen agenda phase stuff in a while.
No.
Right? I mean, all the agenda stuff was kind of buried towards the bottom of the pack. So why is Veto so good?
Because there are some agendas out there that are actually, it feels like there's more and more as we play. There are so many agendas that are really just, all right, we want to ruin one specific player's day.
Right.
And Veto is going to save your life when it comes to that situation. It's really crazy how many agendas feel like they cut down that way, where it's just like, actually, this one is designed to where just all the players are going to want to vote on you. And if you're you basically have to have a veto, otherwise you're screwed.
Right.
So it was hard to decide exactly where to put Veto, right? Because something like skilled retreat, you can imagine using all the time. Veto, there's going to be a lot of games where you don't use it, but I will 100% of the time be happy to have a veto in my hand.
Yes,
always.
Exactly. I'll keep the veto. I'm not going to burn that veto. And there's kind of a big agenda phase thing that I think has to get broken down here, because when we talk about the agenda phase, usually, like, the reason we get these high impact agendas, it's not like most of the agendas in the deck are high impact. They're not. But that's what people send through when they take politics. So that's, I mean, I think most of the time, if you see a nothing burger agenda, it's either because it's the last round of the game and the person who played politics doesn't need any crazy stuff to happen, or it got there randomly. Those are the only 2 reasons boring agendas get to the top.
Right.
Beyond that, people put scary stuff on top. So Veto's value is already increased. Veto's value is increased even more because the scenario Hunter painted is like, oh, you might be the person who's targeted and you need to veto that thing. But you know what's even more common? That you're not. But now Veto is currency.
Yeah.
And you can use it for somebody else and get paid to use it. It's one of those it is probably the action card that gets paid to be used more than any other action card in the game.
Certainly.
Sometimes you pay people for sabotages, but you very often pay someone to play a Veto.
Yeah, I would say outside of Sabotage, Veto is the most common, like, bargained for card.
Yep.
And what's cool is that Veto, it's like, if you're, depending on what faction you're playing, Veto might not actually be a very good card for you. There are a lot of factions that I feel like don't really get targeted by any specific agendas. But if you are that person and you have Veto, okay, cool. If you get leverage over somebody via agenda and they need your Veto, that is essentially priceless. That is essentially worth support for the throne, which is like the best thing that you can get. So that's
exactly. Yeah, it's perfectly common for a Veto to be worth a point.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes, and this is, I know, getting a little bit like ridiculous, but it's not implausible to get 2 support for the thrones from Veto. If it's like a wormhole, whatever it's called, where like you kill a bunch of units in like if multiple people are going to have their game devastated by an agenda, the person with veto has all the power.
Yep.
So it's not unheard of to get 2 points off of a single veto. Again, that's like best case scenario, but I can't think of any other action card that's going to net you 2 victory points.
Right. And also it feels good being safe with a veto. Like that's right. I really want to stress that. Like I realize this is a card where you're not always going to get a great opportunity to use it. So its value is a little bit wobbly when it comes to that, but I will always be happy to have one. I would never ever be like, I want to have one.
Yeah, definitely. Number 14, Rise of a Messiah. Action, place 1 infantry from your reinforcements on each planet you control.
Yeah, wow.
We pooped our pampers over frontline deployment, and this is even better. This is, I mean, honestly, actually, when we were talking about it, Hunter, you actually had a little bit of, you thought they were kind of eking each other out. It was a really close match for you.
It is closer
whether or not
for me.
Rise of the Messiah was better than Frontline Deployment. So go through that with me.
So Frontline Deployment, I can see. So, okay, the way I kind of see it is this. So Rise of the Messiah is like the perfect like round 3 card where it's defensive. I'm getting units on every planet, which is like that's like impossible to do. Like I realize what Rise of Messiah is accomplishing is amazing, but Frontline Deployment, putting 3 ground forces on one specific planet, that has the potential to be used as a late game play in order to get ground forces somewhere critical in order to either on the defensive end prevent someone from like invading your home system, or on the offensive end, allowing you to actually accomplish a difficult invasion. Whereas Rise of Messiah, it's lots of ground forces and they're everywhere, which is crazy and awesome. However, when we're talking about the late game and we really just need specific things in specific places, it's at most 2 ground forces in one system. Now, obviously, if you've got carrier, like if you have a combination of other things, you can use Rise of Messiah in much the same way. But Frontline Deployment is very clean as far as a late game get infantry in a place card. Now, but that all being said, Rise of Messiah is awesome. Another point though in my little mini debate I'm having right here with myself is that Rise of Messiah is a lot more sabotageable.
People. Well, what sucks about Rise of the Messiah is, like you said, it comes out early more often.
That's true.
And people are kind of like, am I really going to burn this Sabotage right now?
I can't prove that. You should.
I can't prove that this Rise of the Messiah is going to have a huge impact. Maybe we'll all be fine.
No.
But no, you're right. You should sabotage the Rise of the Messiah.
You should.
I think.
You should.
Because it's a big deal. Here's the argument for Rise of the Messiah being up at number 14, which it exactly is. The difference between 0 ground forces on a planet and 1 ground force on a planet is astronomical. It's a huge deal in how much effort it takes someone to take those planets. Let's say you have a 2-planet system that you took round 1 and then you abandoned round 2 to keep moving forward, and now you have 2 empty planets in one system. If you can Rise of a Messiah and get 2 ground forces there, if those planets were empty, one person needs to send 1 carrier with 2 infantry to take those 2 planets. If there are now 1 ground force on each, 2 ground forces versus 1 invading still isn't even great odds. To make it a sure bet, you need 3, which means if you need 3 ground forces per combat, you need more than 1 carrier. You just upped like substantially how much stuff they have to bring just to come take those planets. Just by putting 1 ground force on each of planet. So the defensive capability of Rise of the Messiah is completely insane, especially when it comes to empty planets that like you need to clutch save. And every planet just became so much stronger because of this 1 card. And you can like save your own game. There are plenty of games where you stretch too thin and oh man, now my planets are going to start getting jumped on. Rise of the Messiah may completely save. People won't even come into your slice because it's like, well, there's ground forces on every planet. It's not worth the effort. But if it's an empty planet, I might throw 1 command counter and a carrier to go, nab up some planets.
Right, and
but if they're slightly defended, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to go there.
Right. And everything you've said, totally true. I 100% agree with. And this is all outside of, without even mentioning, that if you happen to be one of the infantry-focused factions,
right,
this carries on a whole new meaning. If you're Yin, if you're Arborek, if you're Sol, this is insane getting Rise of Messiah. Especially Arborek.
If Arborek plays Res of the Messiah, you should definitely sabotage it, because you can crush their game if you do sabotage. If they're not getting their infantry off and they do a Rise of the Messiah, that's what's going to save the game for them. And if you want to completely kneecap one player at the table, a simple sabotage on the Rise of the Messiah will do it.
Mm-hmm. It's also just so satisfying to use. Like when you fill out your slice and then you play a Rise of Messiah cleanly on round 3, and you just get, you're just like, all right, I'm going to go into the mid game being pretty defensible. It's great.
Right. Number 13, Reactor Meltdown. Action: destroy one space dock in a non-home system.
Yeah.
It's the SAR ball killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's the repellent for SAR, but even more so, it's good against anybody.
Yeah.
I won't reiterate all the same points about how annoying construction objectives are, but certainly a lot worse to lose a space dock than a PDS.
I agree with
by
that.
like orders of magnitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty bad. I mean, I remember our first interaction with Reactor Meltdown was the first time you played Winnu, and you took Mechatol Rex, and you got your space dock, and before you could even use it, someone played Reactor Meltdown right away. You tweeted it, I remember. You tweeted a picture of the card Reactor Meltdown next to your space dock that you were losing. And what's crazy is about Reactor Meltdown is that, like, let's say there's not a SAR and there is a Winnu, then I can 100% guarantee if somebody gets it, that's probably where they're going to play it. Which is odd, but...
The meta has become really fun for this one though too, where this is one of those ones where once you reveal that you have the Reactor Meltdown, be prepared to play it, because this is another one that's going to get bought. Mm-hmm. If you threaten a SAR with a Reactor Meltdown, very often they'll pay you off. Depends on the timing. If they're about to get their second one or third one, maybe they're just like, you know what, whatever, screw you, that's fine. But there's plenty of situations where it's going to be worth some money to threaten that Reactor Meltdown. And you know what's also going to be worth some money? A couple players at the table might be like, actually, I really do want you to destroy that SAR. And now you have a bargaining war over your single action card. And now the player who doesn't want it played on them is arguing with the people that are trying to get you to play it on them, and the price just keeps getting higher. Mm-hmm. This is an action card that merely by saying you have it, you start getting propositions for people to give you stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a huge power, let alone the fact that the card itself is a big impact on the table. It's like, no, it's also sort of like our veto argument. Like, this makes you money, and you're going to use it. When you make, like, you're going to use it, gain a benefit from having used it, and make money off of using it because other people wanted you to do so.
Yeah, and you get something for sure. And yeah, it's a great, probably one of the best, if not the best, like extortion cards in the biz, basically.
I would try very, very hard to play it and get paid. Mm-hmm. If you're the only reason I wouldn't try to get paid when I play it is because I'm the one being directly threatened by the space dock in question.
Right.
But otherwise, like, someone should pay you to use this card because it's very good.
Yeah. All right, number 12, Experimental Battle Station. After another player moves ships into a system during a tactical action, choose one of your space docks that is either in or adjacent to that system. That space dock uses Space Cannon ×3 against ships in the active system. Oh,
oofa doofa.
Yeah,
you get if you had PDS, you get even more shots. If you are extra, you get even more shots. Nothing is more powerful than Space Cannon when there's a lot of it. Right. One or two shots of Space Cannon is like, okay, whatever, I have to deal with that. But as soon as you get to 3 or 4 or higher, that's a huge deal. And this one card is a clutch defender, right? I mean, this is the reason you're playing it is because they're attacking your undefended home system.
Right. Yeah, and I think the biggest strength of the card is that it is unexpected always. There's really no way to predict that it's going to come out. There's only one of them out there. And the fact that it's going to, basically the nature of the card is that it's going to trap your opponent in a situation where they misunderestimated you by quite a bit. That's three shots on a 5. That's
you're gonna get
nuts.
a hit, at least one.
And also with plasma scoring, that's 4 hits on a 5 technically.
4, right?
So
any faction with plasma scoring gets even more benefit out of this card, and it's especially useful because I feel like when the most common time I see it is when someone's just trying to exploit someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sending one carrier, a couple fighters, a couple ground forces, and I'm gonna take your home system because you stupid little idiot, you didn't leave it defended, so I'm really gonna get one over on you. And the person says, "Oh darn, that sucks. Go ahead, come on over," and then plays this action card, and the whole attack is thwarted.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crusher for someone who's trying to get one over on you.
Yeah.
I think it is up so high because in a similar sense to like Courageous to the End, when it comes out thematically, everyone freaks out and it can be a big deal. Once again, it doesn't necessarily have to change anything. It could completely whiff, but I think this is coming back to the same argument as earlier where Courageous to the End saves a space combat. This potentially, I mean, this prevents a space combat, right? It's getting one step ahead of Courageous to the End in terms of what you're blocking. And that's why it kind of gets pushed up above it, is because you might be able to call off the entire fight with this action card. Yeah,
for sure. And it could just, it has that wiggle room to be potentially very, very devastating. Whereas like some of these cards, it's like there's been a lot of talk of like, oh, here's stuff you get for sure. And then there are the cards that like have that wiggle room of like, you might not get anything. There's Plague, there's Courageous to the End, there's Experimental Battle Station. Experimental Battle Station is the best example of this though, because the situation that you're going to get to use it's potentially insane.
Right. One more thing too I want to bring up, I feel like is maybe even a bigger factor. We're talking about like, oh yeah, you can protect your home system, but the person who puts the PDS network in space stock adjacent to Mechatol Rex and gets this card just gained so much power over the control of Mechatol Rex. Whether it's defending their own or preventing the big scary race from taking it, like you get so much power when you've got a space stock next to Mechatol Rex or on Mechatol Rex with Experimental Battle Station in hand. That's an even more clutch play.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could even, like, Winnu could use it from Mechatol to shoot at
anybody
for any reason. And it's a significant, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, the fact that you can hit adjacent systems are what makes it, like, especially unexpected, right? Because people are attacking the system over here. They're not even thinking about your space stock.
Right.
It was they looked at your PDS and they cared about that, but they didn't consider that there's a space stock there that you might have experimental battle stations. So when you use it on a system adjacent to the system with the space stock, the like surprise effect is tripled. I mean, it's just devastating to see it come out when you're like, this was supposed to be a sure thing. This was supposed to be so easy.
All right, what's the next one? What we got?
Number 11.
We're almost to the top 10. I'm excited.
We're almost to the top 10. Number 11 is in the silence of space. After you activate a system, choose one system. Choose one system. During this tactical activation, your ships in the chosen system can move through systems that contain other players' ships. It's like a little mini lightwave deflector. I'll be honest. Hunter, you and I messed this one up for a long time.
Yep.
We didn't read it properly. We didn't do our own advice last week from last action card episode and read all of the cards.
Yep.
Because this one is very specific that the only ships that can go through other ships are ones from one single system going to the destination. I know I've certainly used this card to send everything. I've used this as a single round lightwave deflector or a single turn lightwave deflector, and it is not that. It is more specific than that. But it is still incredibly good.
Yeah. It's one of those late game cards that you're going to get, and you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to build the entire final round around this card. This is the play, which makes it very sabotageable.
Right.
But it is.
But it's the situation of the timing of it is tricky to sabotage.
Oh, that's
I'll
true.
say that much.
Yeah.
after you activate the system, but before you've moved any ships. So the player, you activate the system and you play the In the Silence of Space, and that player now has to do all the math themselves and figure out, wait, which system are they gonna choose, and where's everything gonna come from? It's just hard to figure out what all is gonna happen when they have to sabotage it before you've done any of your movement. You may have more tricks up your sleeve or whatever. If you do your In the Silence of Space and then follow it up with the flank speed, if they didn't sabotage it just gets so tricky with all those timing windows. And I think In the Silence of Space is very sabotageable, but when it comes out in practice, it is hard to sabotage it because you're just kind of like,
sure,
I'm not sure if this is actually as decisive as I can tell. Maybe I'm not counting everything right. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I remember when I first started playing Twilight Imperium, it was one of the first action cards that I noticed as being really good, just in general.
Yeah, I think it's like the first one I knew the name of.
Yeah.
Without right.
I
could just be like, somewhere in that deck is a card called In the Silence of Space, and I'm afraid of it, and it needs to be dealt with. Yeah. It's certainly one of the first ones I knew about.
Baby's first late game card. All right, we ready to talk about number 10?
Let's talk about number 10. Give it to me.
Flank speed. After you activate a system, apply +1 to the move value of each of your ships during this tactical action. One of the most important meat and potatoes cards in the game, in my opinion. So useful in every single phase of the game. Early, mid, late, always useful. You always need one. I think
there's 4 of them.
Yeah, there's 4 of them.
That's
great.
Good.
There's only one other card I can think of that has the level of like, I need to always try and get one of these or have 2 of them even. You always need movement. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and again, it's the game winner. No one thought you were going to get as far as you could. Like I just said, you combo within the Silence of Space. You can combo it with all kinds of things. Like, it's just a part of your final maneuver, right?
Right.
You might not see a use for it. You might draw it round 2, and you just need to keep in the back of your mind, do not discard this card because there's going to be an opportunity in round 6 where I need it very badly.
Yeah.
And so you just need to bank it. And if you get a second one, the first one becomes a little bit more usable. All right, let's use it for just kind of a high utility movement. And now I can keep the other one for the big game changer move. So yeah, just a huge card. Love it. I like that you categorize it as one of the meat and potatoes, that it's just so simple but crucial to the game.
Yeah. It's like whenever they were designing the action cards, I feel like it's the most basic thing that the action cards should allow you to do, which is do something unexpected that was not visually represented, a hidden ability. And the idea that you're going to be able to move somewhere that it was not expected you were going to be able to move is such an obvious, basic, important thing that you'd be able to do. Basically, you always need to be able to move somewhere that someone did not expect, and flank speed is like that. That's all it is, and it's great.
Yeah, right.
All right,
number 9,
signal jamming.
Action: choose one non-home system that contains or is adjacent to one of your ships. Place a command token from another player's reinforcements in that system. This one's got some really specific things to it. And I think that's why some people might kind of be like, oh my gosh, number 9 for signal jamming. But it's a huge deal card for a multitude of reasons. It's a stall.
Right.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that this is the number 1, like, trip up your opponent in the late game, prevent them from winning a card, basically. And it's so good for that. Actually, I mean, there's one more card that is way more like trip. Oh, you thought you were going to get the point, but you're not going to now. I will say that signal jamming is a little bit tricky to use, and I've seen it misused. But the potential that it has to basically stop someone from winning the game is very obvious, basically.
Right. The big deal to me, too, is we talked about with Diplomacy Rider being able to activate Mechatol Rex with it. This has that same thing. It is like Diplomacy, but it is not limited to being used against Mechatol Rex, which can be huge.
Yeah.
Because you can either stop someone from invading Mechatol Rex when you are there, or someone has a weakly defended Mechatol Rex and you know they're planning to reinforce it, but you want to jump on it. You can lock all their stuff down, or whatever. You know, there's just so many uses to being able to open up locking down Mechatol Rex. It's a big deal, and very often you're adjacent to Mechatol Rex. I mean, it's, you know, especially, I mean, we're seeing in tourney, you know, basically every player ends up adjacent to Mechatol Rex because of the layout of our map. But even still, in general, it's pretty common for you to end up with some ships nearby. And I just think that this card, I think it's the second best defensive card we have up here, I guess.
Right.
Depends on how what you call. I guess Sabotage is a defensive card, but we're getting into the like superpower defensive cards.
Right. I would just say signal jamming is something that I always worry about in the late game. If I'm having a good game, if I feel like I have a chance at winning it, I'm going to be thinking like, oh well, what if somebody signal jams this unit right here?
Right.
If these ships get locked down before they get to accomplish the action phase secret that I have to do, you know, it's like if someone is very efficiently reading the table, signal jamming is really all it can take sometimes to ruin your game. And also, it's one of those cards that has potential for the entire table to find it and want to use it against you. You know what I mean? It's like, like in the same way that Reactor Meltdown, it's like because somebody is probably going to draw it, you can almost be like, well, there's going to be 100% chance that someone might want to Reactor Meltdown Sar or Winnu.
Right.
Like you can basically say that all the time. If you have a table that is really doing a good job of reading and calling out who the leaders are, which isn't always, but if that is true, then signal jamming is like 100% going to mess up your plan.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let's talk about
number 8. Imperial Rider. After an agenda is revealed, do the prediction stuff. If your prediction is correct, gain a victory point.
All right.
This is the most out of step victory point, I think, in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, there's agendas that get victory points. There's the objectives, obviously. This one is just the most like, now we have to, and it completely changes the context of an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
If you're smart, you play it on something that is either a sure thing or everyone else has played a bunch of riders on the other side of it or whatever.
Right.
You know, I have seen this get misplayed. It's not crazy difficult to like make this a poor play, but it always, when Imperial Rider gets played, the agenda no longer matters.
Mm-hmm.
All that matters is where Imperial Rider is. That's now the agenda. The agenda is now for so-and-so gets a point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The reason it... Oh, go ahead.
I think you can effectively almost use it as a veto as well. That's basically what I like about the versatility of it, is that it can be used, and if you're wily enough, you can use it to actually get a point and force them to hand that to you, depending on how the agenda is cutting out. But you can also just like see something come up that's like really going to hurt you, and then basically be like, all right, well, you guys have to give me a point if you're going to hurt me this bad. Which sometimes they end up doing. It's a very good defensive agenda card, but you can also use it offensively as well. It's great. It's worth a point, which is, kind of the dang old reason that we play. Right, yeah. That's the whole way that you win, actually.
I would say the reason it's not ranked, it is so good, and the reason it's not ranked higher is because of how immensely sabotageable it is.
Sure.
I would argue
in a literal sense and in a non-literal sense too. Like, in a you can play Sabotage the action card on it, but also like it's easy for other players to mess it up for you. Sometimes what happens is you play Imperial Rider, and then the way that everybody else plays their riders makes it impossible for you to get your Imperial Rider. So
but even with just dealing with the Sabotage action card, I feel like this is one of the ones that the most people have the incentive to want to sabotage it.
Right.
It's only if you're in dead last that people are like, I don't care if he gets a point.
Right.
But in most cases, like you played the Imperial Rider, everyone immediately asks, okay, who's got a Sabotage? And it's not like a big skin off their back to play the Sabotage on it. It is worth it. It is worth it to play the Sabotage on this card. And somebody's probably got it. And there's just a lot of discussion that happens when this card gets played. So I think it gets knocked down a peg because how quick and easily many players will Sabotage it. For some play groups, it's basically automatic. If Imperial Rider gets played, it will get sabotaged 100%.
Yeah.
So I think it goes down a couple pegs. It's at number 8 because of that. I would love to see it in top 5 otherwise, but it gets knocked down a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's where it belongs now and forever at number 8. But yeah, it's because it's got that wiggle room of like it's worth a point, but you do have to play it correctly. You have to be smart about it, and the table could always just like completely buck at what you're trying to do. Some people treat it as poison, like you're saying, basically. So in that case, it's never really going to work. But in that way, if it's always worth a sabotage, it's that's something.
That's
one less sabotage out there.
Something.
Yeah,
right. Number 7. Repeal law, action, discard 1 law from play. I think there are probably some listeners out there who are hearing Repeal law as our 7th best action card, and they are quite confused why we think this is such a crucial action card.
Yeah, well, why do we think that?
Hunter?
No. How about you do it?
Sure, I will do it. Repeal law, if you're using it correctly, is a point for you. It's an action card that should give you a point. Because the weird interaction, and I believe we talked about this last action card episode, but the weird thing with Repeal law is if you discard a law from play that was giving someone a victory point, they do not lose that victory point. So the example being, Shard of the Throne. If you get Shard of the Throne played on you and you have that victory point, if you discard Shard of the Throne, you keep the point despite losing the shard, so that point can no longer be taken from you. Any point that you gain outside of the objectives is a hugely important thing. That's why Mechatol Rex can be so important. Getting Imperial points off of Mechatol means you just upped like the amount of potential you have to score in that game. So Repeal law is that same factor. If I can get the Crown of Amphidia, if I can get the Shard of the Throne, all I have to do is repeal it, and I now gain the point forever. Right. So that's one major reason this is hugely powerful. Now, that's not what makes it number 7, though, because at the end of the day, even if you're not getting rid of a thing that gives you a point, you can still get rid of an agenda that is a complete horrible thorn in your side and reopen the game up to yourself. If all the wormholes got closed and that's ruining your opportunity to win, Repeal law opens up your opportunity to win again. And anything else like that. I mean, there are, like we've talked about multiple times, there are lots of very devastating agendas out there, and to be able to repeal them is very good. Obviously, the directives where it's just like, oh, it fired off.
Yeah, that
you don't get to do anything about that.
Right.
But the laws that hurt you, you can save yourself, and that's a big deal. And the same thing goes for getting paid for Repeal law. Someone out there really hates that this agenda exists, and you might be able to get paid to use your Repeal law that you've been sitting on.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting to get rid of what has essentially been a really horrible rule for somebody. I mean, I would say basically 100% of the time you can sell Repeal law in much the same way that you can sell Veto. But it also just has a lot of very strange interactions that come along with it. I would say it's very weird that it is this high, and I think the reason that it has a lot to do with those very strange potential in it. Basically, Basically, anytime you have an agenda like that talks about, it's very gamey. The reason that it's this high, you know what I mean? Like it's not a logical thing. I don't even know if it was like an intentional thing for Repeal law to have as much potential energy that it has. So I would say it's just like overall a pretty useful card at about the same level as Veto, but then also carries this like very strange specific circumstances with it.
Yeah. Number 6, Insubordination. Action, remove 1 token from another player's tactic pool and return it to his reinforcements. This is our highest ranking as an action card.
Yeah.
This is by the books the best stall action you can have. Which I think is a little bit counterintuitive, because you're just removing 1 command counter from a tactics pool from somebody else. But that's because the way you're supposed to play it is to stop the final action of someone who's going to do a really big action, right? I mean, that's the whole point of insubordination is you block a game-winning move and you just saved the game for yourself.
Yep. It's the command counter economy is like one of the most difficult things to contend with in TI4. This I feel like is, I mean, it's very akin to signal jamming. I would call them like sister cards, basically.
Right.
Except for this one, if you're watching the other players, you could find an opportunity to use it basically in any round of the game. Signal jamming feels very specific. It feels like most of the opportunities that are going to be so specifically useful for it is late game where there is a big fleet that needs to do something, right? That's like the classic example of like, this is when signal jamming is going to be useful. That fleet's locked down. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. And that was a fleet you're going to use to get the point. Insubordination is like that, except for you could find somebody that is running low on command counters at any round of the game and basically stop them from getting a point pretty easily. It's almost easier, I would say, in the early to mid-game round to stop somebody from scoring with insubordination. So that's kind of my argument for insubordination being at number 6 is that it's akin to signal jamming, except for it's devastating basically all the time. Now, the thorn in its side is there are some factions that will basically never have a problem with insubordination. A Sarl being the easiest example. You insubordinate a Sarl and they're just going to be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm stalling. I'll be fine. I'll be able to figure this out.
Right.
But give me the right faction, and essentially there will be like a million little opportunities to use insubordination, and all of them will be really rough on somebody, basically.
Yeah. I like you bringing up the kind of like mid-game potential of it because I don't think enough people do things to block people's mid-game points, and those can be a big deal. Stalling someone out of a point in round 3 is like, that sets them back for their potential to swing in round 6.
Right.
And insubordination doesn't have to only be used as the final game-making play, right? Flank speed and those kind of things typically do, but blocking someone in round 3 or 4 from getting the final move they wanted to do can set them back a lot more than just one command counter.
Yep.
It sets back their entire game plan for maybe the next 2 or 3 rounds. So
it also has that like everybody team up on them kind of aspect to it where like if you insubordinate someone correctly, then I guarantee you that other players are going to try and stall that player out. Like it's just how it works. Like if I have mismanaged my command counters, I'm going into a round and I've only got like one in tactic. And then somebody else insubordinates me. I lose that one tactic. Now everyone knows if they wait on leadership, I'm out for this round. I'm not doing anything. And I'm completely...
It's more than just your final action. You just cost them the entire round of being able to accomplish anything.
Yeah, and even very good players, everyone that is listening to this show and has ever played Twilight Imperium for any amount of time can tell you there are times that you go into a round with 1 or 2 in your tactic. It doesn't mean that you're bad that you went in like that. But if you are, that means you are at a very high risk of being insubordinated, and it could crush your round, basically.
Yeah, and by extension, crush your whole game. Because one round of like losing all those opportunities, how do you come back from that? It's very, very hard.
Right.
Number 5. Parlay.
Yeah.
After another player commits units to land on a planet you control, return the committed units to the space area. This is back to that bunker kind of debate of like, increasing the chances. This is just straight up and down. You're not invading this planet. You're not invading Mechatol Rex. You're not invading my home planet.
Right.
You're not invading that 4th planet trait or that 5th tech specialty or whatever it is. There's just nothing they can do about it except for, pop a sabotage. But like a parlay is very, very often used to block a point, and it's equally often used to completely save like the most critical planet in your slice.
Yeah. I think of it more, the situation where I feel like parlay comes up all the time is when you're trying to stop the leader. Whenever you're trying to stop the person that's about to win the game. All right, we've invaded the home system. I hope they don't have parlay. Well, if they do, then this is over, basically. Unless we have a sabotage, which I would say, like, any card that is talked about with that level, like basically all the cards that we have left are essentially that.
Right. We're in the top 5, and it's all...
It's just cards...
who has that?
Right.
We're looking for it all game.
Yeah.
I'm constantly worried about who has this card and who has that card.
Right. So Parlay is just something like you have to factor in as a possibility all the time. It is in kind of a weird way, kind of a win more card as far as its crazy potential. It's always going to be helpful to Parlay, but we can describe it as if like it is the card that is going to like lock in the victory for you. But it also can just be the card that you use to deny a point, which is also good. So it kind of has that range from being like point denial is on the low end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like point denial, at the worst you're going to do is deny a point with one card. The best you're going to do is literally this is what allowed you to win the game, basically.
Right.
So pretty great card.
No, pretty great. Very simple in how great it is, honestly. That's kind of the other part that's great about it. It's just like, stop the combat. That's it. There's nothing else to talk about. I'm sorry. We're done. We're done here. Thank you. Goodbye. Like, just so easy. Number 4, political stability.
Yeah.
When you would return strategy cards during the status phase, do not return your strategy card. You do not choose strategy cards during the next strategy phase. So you get to keep whatever you were just playing.
Right.
Obviously, with Imperial, it's like the biggest. It's a huge deal. If you're going into the last round and you know that if you just need Imperial and they'll win it, political stability in your hand when you already just used Imperial is it. That's the game. You're going to win it now.
Right.
The only thing that can stop you is a Sabotage. It's so hard to talk about these cards because, honestly, I've gotten to the point where we now don't see them used huge anymore, right? Because people know they have to keep the sabotages for these cards.
Right.
So in this top 5, or especially just like in political stability's case, it's like it's such a good card that you don't actually get to see it played that often because of how everybody's banking a sabotage for it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's an any worse card. Like that's what keeps it up this high, is like you need to put it up this high because everyone at the table needs to be worried about this card.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to use political stability correctly, that is another situation that I feel like we've mentioned several times now, which is that this card is the like, well, I won the game because I was able to do this.
Right.
Political stability is like, if I draw that in round 1, well, now I plan the next 3 or 4 rounds based on political stability.
Right,
like
because you need to know when are you going to get politics so that you can get Imperial a round before anyone is afraid of you, so that you can political stability the round that it matters.
Right. And I mean that's the easy example, but you could use it differently depending on how the objectives were coming out to even political stability in a way that also allowed you to win, and it doesn't just have to do with Imperial. Imperial is the easiest example, and when someone has Imperial, there's literally always a risk that they have political stability. And so that's what makes it so powerful. It like shapes so much of the meta is shaped around this one card, and whether it can be sabotaged or not.
Political stability on a leadership is even a big deal. Like locking yourself into going first next round. Political stability on tech to guarantee, if all you're going to need next round is 2 more tech to win the game. Okay, and that's a really good opportunity where people probably won't sabotage it, because if they don't see it yet, if you've got other parts of your plan and it's just having the right amount of tech as one aspect of it, political stability on tech it feels a little bit harmless, and so that's the way you get it through more often than not.
I really like what you just said actually about the political stability on leadership potential. Mostly because, and this is kind of a weird case, but I think it would be very, very fun and super spicy to basically plan to stall out the entire table. If I get leadership twice in a row, essentially the first time I take leadership, it should be like, well, I'm going to get as many command counters as possible and maybe take the round as light as I can. And then I'm going to keep leadership so that next round I'm going into it being like, all right, I'm doing everything this round and none of you are getting to get any more command counters than you've had.
Right. I'll do leadership very late in the round and you'll
starve everybody. Now, that's a very fringe way to bring it up, and you would have to... But that's what I'm saying, is this card is so powerful in that having it unlocks a new way of thinking, basically, like strategically for the game. So that's how groundbreaking it is, basically, for you as an individual player to draw this card.
Number 3.
We're there.
Hey,
we got there. Hey, we got to it's Sabotage.
It's Sabotage time.
Yeah.
When another player plays an action card other than Sabotage, cancel that action card. There's 4 of these puppies, and we've been talking about it. Every other action card is defined by Sabotage.
It honestly would be a really easy number 1. We decided to not do that. I feel like putting Sabotage as number 1 is like kind of a cop-out.
Right.
But
because it trumps all other action cards. But that's why it is at least number 3. And it's exactly number 3. Is because it stops everything else. And every by some definition, every action card is defined by how sabotageable it is.
Yes.
The bottom of this list is stuff that's not, you're not that worried about sabotaging, and the stuff at the top of this list you are worried about sabotaging.
Yeah.
It's just,
I don't even think we need to say much. You know what I mean?
Literally, because we've been talking about it the entire episode.
Yeah. So that's the thing about Sabotage is the reason it's here is because we haven't shut up about it the entire time we've been talking about action cards. We've literally talked about it probably once every 2 or 3 minutes for this entire how long is this episode going to be? 5 hours? Jesus.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So it's an insane card. It's bread and butter. It's important. It's game changing. It's it's going to be the most important card that anybody ever has, basically, is Sabotage. It's
the most counted card out of anything. It's people really want to know exactly how many Sabotages have been used, and that's a big factor. And you can, again, with all these other things, Vetoes type stuff, you can sell your Sabotages, and it's very common to sell Sabotages. So it's not just saving you. It's not just defensive. You're using a Sabotage for any and all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, and honestly, if we were boring, we would have put it at number 1. Because it is the boring answer to what is the best action card. But too bad it's not, and we're in charge, so it's number 3. Looks like it's number 3. Now and forever. Solid.
Now and forever.
In stone. Rock. Like a rock.
Let's talk solid as a rock. Let's talk about number 2. Politics Writer. The best writer in our books. Politics Writer. You can't vote on this agenda. Predict the thing. If your prediction is correct, draw 3 action cards and gain the speaker token.
So why?
So this is the only action card. I'm going to say this, and I'm hoping I'm correct. It's the only action card where you net gain action cards off of playing it.
Oh, right. Yes.
So in terms of what people, card draw mechanics and having card advantage, which is like a magic term that doesn't actually fully apply to Twilight Imperium. But in the case of Politics Writer, it's like the only card that's like, oh, I just gained card advantage because I played Politics Writer. I netted 2 additional cards. I gained 3 utilities. But not only that, you gained a lot out of Politics Writer because you also got the speaker token. And getting the speaker token in the agenda phase, when someone last round played Politics and had a whole plan set up, you screwed them over, and now you get to go into the next round with exactly what you want to do. This can be a game winner. This can be I'm now the speaker and I'm going to get Imperial and you're not going to stop me kind of thing.
Why? Because it's a writer, so I mean you might not necessarily get it. Why?
Because you almost always get it. Because when the speaker token moves, in most cases, I would say about the average. In a 6-player game, the average case is going to be one person gets totally screwed, one person it hurts, and then 3 people are benefiting from it because the speaker token is moving 1 step closer to them. So when you play a Politics Writer, it's different from an Imperial Writer. Imperial Writer, you're the only one gaining anything, and so people go, well, we can't let him have the Imperial Writer. But when you play Politics Writer, it's very common for 2 people to just be like, yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with Politics Writer person because I don't care. I want to get 2 closer. I would rather go 4th than 5th. And I would rather go 3rd than 4th. So you build a coalition off of playing Politics Writer.
Right.
Even more so than Imperial Writer, it changes the definition of the agenda you're even doing. Because now the agenda is, are we going to move the speaker token around?
Right.
And multiple people are in favor of moving the speaker token. So it's just so common to see Politics Writer hit. Because people don't worry that much about you gaining 3 action cards. It's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, and they want to get higher in speaker order. So it's like the most assured rider out of all the riders, and it's also one of the biggest benefits.
I mean, essentially, if you play it correctly, I think you can totally misplay this rider and not actually get it. But if you play it with, any level of competency, then the card is effectively, you get the speaker token and 3 action cards. Which if it said that, I would be like, wow, that's the best action card. To be able to get the speaker token on demand is so crucial.
And in many cases, get the agenda to go the way you want.
Right.
Because people are going to be on your coalition, you get to put the politics rider in favor of whichever direction you want this agenda to go. So you're getting an agenda that benefits you, you're getting the speaker token, and you're getting 3 action cards. And most of that is pretty sure.
Yeah. I would say that what's really interesting about it is that in a lot of cases, you can use it. You can use it to end up getting the speaker token unexpectedly and go into a round. Actually, now with a chance at winning that you might not have had before, that's huge. Also, though, the kind of easiest way I think to apply politics rider is as a denial. So it kind of has the ability of political stability to kind of like give you a useful strategy card in a phase in an unexpected way. But it also has the ability to basically steal the victory from somebody else, which also makes it a very easy rider to convince people of. If somebody has the speaker token, we're going into what's going to be the final round, and it looks like they're going to win. Politics rider can be the 100%, okay, it's over, they're not going to win now, basically.
Right. And if you have your sneaky chance to win, you're gonna, obviously it becomes a king-making scenario if it's like, well, are we gonna let them keep the speaker token or them, whatever.
Right.
But in most cases, what you're setting up is you have diverted attention away from them, you're gonna get your thing, and then you're gonna sneak a victory out of the round that people weren't expecting you to be the one to get.
Yeah. I think that I definitely have played games where essentially that is what happened. And I think just the idea that it's such a reliable way to gain the speaker token, if played correctly, it's a great card. What a great action card. Yeah, love it. But I've noticed, Matt, we actually only have one more left.
Oh my gosh.
So that would be number 1.
If you've been counting all game and you've seen all the action cards going through, you've been looking out for this one and you've been wondering what's going to happen with it, and you're worried about it. You're constantly fretting about who's got this action card. Do they have it? And we're worried about it. And you've been waiting for us to talk about it this whole time, and it's public disgrace when another player chooses a strategy card during the strategy phase. That player must choose a different strategy card if able.
Public disgrace.
It's the most talked about action card, maybe outside of Sabotage, but just because Sabotages are all over the place. But like during a strategy phase in the final round of the game, it's always the number one question. Does so-and-so have public disgrace?
Right.
And do we have a Sabotage to deal with it? And it is by far, like, it should get sabotaged almost every single time. Like but it's because it's the game winner in every... Not just the game winner, but also the game blocker. And that's why it's even more. If it was just it's going to give you the opportunity to win, but sometimes it's not that effective, it wouldn't be number one. But the fact that it is straight up just like, we can stop that person from winning.
Yep.
That's the power of public disgrace. Yep. The whole table. That's why it doesn't get sabotaged as often. It gets sabotaged if you're picking second and number one picks Imperial, and you block Imperial and you want to take it. People are going to sabotage it because it's like, oh, you're in the lead, we're not going to let you get Imperial. But more often, it's the person is the speaker and they take Imperial, and the whole table is in favor of you playing public disgrace. So the only sabotage you're worried about is from that person you're targeting.
Right.
And that's a way better scenario for this card to get played. And it completely stalls the game out and gives everybody an opportunity to win.
Yep.
Still.
Yep. It's one of those cards everybody's thinking about it always. I think it's the card I hate the most, actually, of all the cards, because if I'm having a game that's going well, oftentimes, unless I have a sabotage, I there is nothing I can do about being public disgraced, basically.
Right.
It's like a required sabotage, and if you don't have a sabotage for it, if people are paying attention, you have no way of winning, basically.
Yeah. If I in like round 1, 2, or 3 or whatever, like if I in the early game get a public disgrace in my hand, it is now my goal to start finding all the sabotages and fishing them out, right? Like for the rest of the game, it's like I need to do things that get people
for sure
to burn their sabotages. I need to make that happen. That's now the storyline of my game, is making sure that this public disgrace doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah, because if there were no sabotages in the game, then public disgrace is essentially just like, all right, let's see who the leader is going to be. All right, they don't win. Okay.
Yeah. It's just
that's essentially what it is.
Right. Well, we did it. We announced the best action cards. We went through the whole thing in exact proper order, and it can never be disputed.
It can't. It's over. That's how they are. That's how it is forever. I know probably a lot of people were surprised that Sabotage was not number 1, but it just ain't. It ain't.
It just ain't. It just wasn't. When we did the math.
Yeah, we did.
When we did all that math that you and I did.
We did a lot of math.
It wasn't number 1.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say if you guys have any comments of like, oh, I feel like the like direct to hit is not number 25. I think it should be more like number 26.
We did the math.
I
don't know what
so
to tell
like,
you.
sorry, it's like it's kind of exactly where it should be.
Yeah.
I am excited about the amount of errata we're going to get for this episode. And
speaking of
what,
we should do some errata about last action card episode.
Okay, cool. Well, let's do that. All right, good. Yes.
Yep.
How long is this episode right now?
You're looking at the time code. We're going to burn through it so fast. Just watch
How
me.
long
All right, here we go.
is this episode?
We're like at 2.5 hours. I don't know. The last action card episode was the longest episode ever, and this might be beating
Oh
it.
my god.
Let's do some errata.
Okay,
here we go.
Let's do it.
Brian the Bodacious says, ambush, pre-combat abilities, yin stuff, and courageous than are all effects during combat that damage, destroy units, so Necro does gain tech from them. So thank you for that correction that we we mentioned.
Bam.
You get that.
Hey, Matt, read it again. Read it again.
I know, thank you. Listen, so Brian's breaking it all down for me and for anyone else who kind of gets messed up by all these annoying timings. You get that the invasion step includes a timing window to play disable. Steps 1 through 5, including bombardment, parlay, space cannon defense, and ground combat. Bombardment and space cannon defense are not a part of ground combat, even though they are a part of invasion. This is sort of like the same argument that ambush ends up getting. Space combat includes pre-combat effects. Steps 1 through 5. Steps 2 through 5 are a round of combat. So being inside of combat does not necessitate a combat role, and being a part of invasion does not necessitate ground combat with all these timing windows. So when you read action cards, you have to think about the terms that they are specifically referring to. If it's just space combat, that's space combat at large. If it's invasion, that's invasion at large, and includes things like bombardment and all those things. Pre-combat is not a part of a round of space combat, but is a part of is not a part of a round of space combat, but is a part of space combat. Anti-Fighter Barrage is not a combat role because Anti-Fighter Barrage is an ability. Courageous to the End compares to the hit value and is not a combat role, so it's not affected by Sardak Nor, Nebula, Morale Boost, Hakan Flagship, Jolnar modifiers, but it's only playable during space combat, which is why Necro gets a tech off of it.
Right. So somebody listened to this 3-hour episode and then got that very... You said, okay, so this was the craziest thing that anyone's ever said.
You've got the bone to pick. I was going to let it sit, but you go ahead.
Pre-combat is not part of a round of space combat, but it is part of space combat. What a game that we play. What a stupid game that we play. That this
speaking of more stupid
pre-combat
atrocities.
Pre-combat is not a part of a round of space combat, but it is part of space combat. That actually reminds me of this time that when I was working at this brewery, this lady ordered she was like, "Do you have any sour beers?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we have a Goza, which is a German style beer, very traditional beer." And I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh, this I meant like a sour beer, like a beer that like it's like a style, like it's been soured. However, this was just a beer that tasted sour. And I hadn't really thought about that distinction from that point. So she literally looked at me and no smile on her face, completely stone cold, was just like, this is a sour beer, not a sour beer.
I want to die. Unaligned Magi says, I can't remember if it was mentioned, but one of the biggest pains for me with new players is playing multiple copies and why direct hit is okay, but others aren't. So we tried to cover, I actually, this was the one I tried to pre-errata within the episode, is to talk about, yes, direct hit, again, to quickly reiterate, direct hit can be applied to multiple ships because each ship assigning its own hits is a different timing window, which is why it's allowed. Please try explaining that to a new player and watch their eyes roll into the back of their brain.
Yeah, it's not fair, but it's a thing.
There's a really good thread on Board Game Geek. That's the first time you've ever heard me say that. No, just kidding. Called Sabotage Timing. And in a comment by Scott Lewis, Dane spells out basically all of the confusing sabotage timing windows. And essentially, for any weird questions about certain action cards, after a decision has been made is when you can play the sabotage, but before any chance has been decided. That's why things like Plague, you have to choose the planet, but then if the person wants to sabotage it, they don't get to see the results of the roll.
Yeah.
So if you want more specifics, find that sabotage timing thread and look for the comment by Sigma013. He's got it all laid out from what Dane kind of specifically said about a bunch of random action cards. We've got one more from Brian the Bodacious because he just really wouldn't leave me alone after the last action card episode. And he said, something worth covering in Action Cards Part 2, it's always better to pay somebody to use a card on somebody else than to pay them to not use the card. They'll continue to threaten to use the card forever. This is like the number one argument about Reactor Meltdown, right? It's not only should the person playing Reactor Meltdown try to get paid to use it, but players who are getting it targeted at them don't need to let that action card sit anymore. So not only should you say, I'll give you 2 trade goods to not play it on me, you should say, I'll give you 2 trade goods to not play it on me and play it on Kevin right now. I need you to do that. That's what I'm paying you. I'll give you a political secret to play it on Kevin right now because I need that to not be a thing I deal with you every single round. It's sort of like how I felt about you in the Extra game, Hunter, where you got up next to me as I was like SAR or something, and you just were going to keep threatening me with your flagship over and over again. You didn't have to send any fleets in, and it was just going to completely ruin me over and over and over again. And I wish there had been a permanent way to pay you off. This is the action card version of being able to actually permanently pay them off.
Right. All right, well, it's rundown time of this super packed, extra long episode. You can check out the Twitter for game updates and announcements. You can check out our Facebook, Space Cats Peace Turtles, for announcements, and you can send Matt questions.
You sure can.
Check out the subreddit Twilight Imperium for our weekly posts and discussions that happen there. You can go to our guild on Board Game Geek to see what RoboFish is doing and how he's feeling about.
He's still there.
Episodes.
He never stops.
Yeah.
That we keep making this joke, and we only keep making this jokes because he continues to come and comment on every post, and I'll never stop as long as he doesn't.
Yeah. You can check out our Patreon, our Patronian, our Patron. You can be a Patron if you would like, and there are various tiers and lots of fun things that are offered in the tiers. Right now, I would say that it's very focused on the tournament that is basically swallowing me and Matt's lives.
Whole life.
I want to try and play a good Yin Brotherhood game very soon, though, and it would. The thing that's crazy about it is that it would have to happen during the week, which I realize would probably not work out for a lot of people. But essentially,
take this as an announcement. GYB, hit up Hunter, like, seriously, this week. Like, after you listen to this episode and you hear this announcement, start messaging Hunter because he might be able to squeeze in
I want to figure it out, and the scheduling will be difficult. But I do want to do it. I just straight up want to play, so that's the thing.
Yeah. I haven't played in 2 months.
Yeah, we don't get to play anymore. We don't get to play anymore
Yeah.
because of this tournament. We don't get to play. We just watch people play. All right. Check out our Discord for fun conversations and Patreon benefits for all you Patreon.
Fun conversations like space combat includes pre-combat effects. Pre-combat is not a part of a round of space combat, but is a part of space combat.
It's not a part of a round of space combat, but it is part of space combat. Oh, okay. This game's dumb. Please rate us on your podcast app of choice, especially Apple Podcast and iTunes. Hi, my name's Hunter. I'm a comedian. Check me out every Thursday at a show called Earthquake Hurricane that I co-host with my friends. Starts at 8 p.m. at Ford Food and Drink in Portland, Oregon. And also on February 9th, we will be doing another Comedy Bender show, which is like a brunch comedy show that involves people reading like anonymous stories. It's very funny. It's very great. That's on February 9th. Starts at noon at the Lamp, which is a bar connected to the Aladdin Theater in Portland, Oregon.
Hey, I got a thing.
Yeah.
I want to. You always get to do little plugs. I got a fun plug. It's a weird one, but a movie I worked on 2 years ago called Antiquities just got released on iTunes.
Ooh.
And I was the second assistant director, which, if you don't know anything about film, is kind of a high up role. And I was really proud of everything that got done on that movie. And it's like my favorite project I've ever worked on in Arkansas. And it's one of my very good friends that made it. And you should absolutely go watch Antiquities, please. It's got like amazing talent in it. Some of the funniest like actors playing really weird parts. I told the director it's the most convincing portrayal of complete weirdos I've ever seen on screen. Everyone is just so convincingly weird, and you're not just like, oh, they're just being a weird comedy bit part. It's like, no. I believe that person is a weird little freak, and I can't stop watching them. So you gotta see it. I really hope everyone goes out and buys it, because Antiquities is a small Arkansas indie film that deserves support and can help grow that whole culture in this state that I like being in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess you did do a plug now all of a sudden. Well, that actually reminds me to do my plug now.
Oh no!
I wrote a movie. And it's on my computer. So if you guys want to come by my house and read the movie I wrote, it's actually I'm the screenwriter of the movie. It hasn't been made, but screenwriter is pretty big job. And it's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's like Grease. But the car, Grease Lightning, is the car Christine that like kills people.
I want to thank some patrons.
Okay.
I want to thank our Space Kitties, Jim Bob, Dustin, Doom, Mac, the Cartographer of Chaos, Frederick Durston, Nathan Swenson, and Yin for life. You'll notice that this episode was excruciatingly long, and we haven't talked about any games.
We will.
We will next week. Next week's going to be, I don't know for sure yet if next week's going to be entirely games or not, but you're going to get a lot of game updates.
Yeah.
In next
we
week's
got a lot of
episode,
games to talk
sure.
about. And where are we at with the YouTube as far as the...
We're getting caught up. There's been some technical disasters. So, games 6, 7, and 9 aren't great.
They're not great, no.
Audibly. The audio is very, very bad. But I uploaded them because some people just want to get the stuff up there so they can check out the plays and see the stats. But you basically can't hear any of the conversation. And I'm working to try to get that fixed, but it's a doozy. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see how that goes. But let's get out of here with a play of the week.
Play of the week.
From Sage 1589, listening to the podcast, right? This is actually, I pulled this from the Discord. Sage did not submit this as a play of the week, but I thought it was so good, I had to steal it from him and use it as a play of the week. So Sage says, listening to the podcast right now, and had to pause to share a story about Shard of the Throne. I had Shard, and another player took it from me. Then I drew Repeal Law. When I was about to use it, David S. Knorr, the person running the Austin tournament, the Lone Star Galactic Council tournament coming up, David S. Knorr stopped me to ensure I understood that if I repealed, the other player would keep the point, and he knew I had planned to take the point back before I got my repeal. With David's sound, if selective advice, I chose not to repeal. I say selective because that very round, David attacked the other player, taking the Shard of the Throne for himself and putting himself at 8 points, then took a 2-point objective for the win. It was beautiful and horrible. I was crushed and awed. I wept both in agony and in joyous pride that my fellow player had just pulled off an excellent con while also being a good game teacher.
Wow. Both very true. Both of those things, though. Good advice. Good sound advice. Totally helped.
He was 100% right to help the player in the moment, because if the player had misplayed the card, he would have regretted it. He wouldn't have been able to get that Shard of the Throne, and the other player would have kept the point.
And also, David S. Knorr would have not
David knew.
won. So, That's great.
So, David, you are a beautiful monster.
That is,
and thank you for that.
That doesn't happen often. That's like once in a lifetime. That right there. All right. Well, bye.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Good
that
night.
was yeah. Ooh, wow.
Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles, and thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.
Episode 69, Action Cards, Part 2.
No, it's not that one. That's not the one.